Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Ocean Robbins, and I am so excited that in about 6 minutes we're going to begin day 3 of the Food Revolution Summit. We'll be starting with Andrew Kimbrell with critical insights from the front lines of the food revolution. I want to welcome you to the beginning of day 3 here, and I want to thank you so much for joining us, and I want to congratulate you. I hope that in some way this summit is able to support you in living your dreams, in achieving the health you want, and in participating in the food revolution that is sweeping this globe. As every one of our speakers so far has revealed so clearly, the status quo is not acceptable. It is a fast track to obesity, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and to so many people feeling like crap. But there are incredible breakthroughs taking place as we come to understand what is possible when we truly make food into the foundation of health. If you just joined us, we're going to be starting today's broadcasts in about 5 minutes. Yesterday, we heard some incredibly powerful presentations from Dr. Dale Bredesen, Drs. Dean and Ayesha Sherzai, and Dr. Daniel Amen, and we've received thousands of enthusiastic emails and comments. Inga Martin said, I just signed up because there is so much good information that will take time to absorb, and I will want to share it with my friends and my family. Thank you for organizing this summit to provide scientific results about what foods are good for us and why. There's a lot of deceiving information out there that can be confusing to many people. Wish we could apply this knowledge to what we serve our children in school, especially those children living in poverty that are at higher risk. Well, Inga, I am right with you in that, and I want this information out there everywhere. But one of the things that breaks my heart the most is how many kids are living, growing up addicted to junk foods, and the impact that's having on their entire lives. A third of our kids are expected to get diabetes in their lifetime. Rates of food allergies and obesity and ADHD and so many other challenges are skyrocketing amongst our children. And so many kids feel like it's their fault that they're sick, that they're lethargic, that they can't think clearly. And they don't realize that the food they're eating every day is fueling their suffering. And the junk food industry is preying on our children with advertisements, with so-called happy meals, with pretty pictures, with trying to market to kids and get them hooked on a lifetime of eating foods that are making them sick. So we all have, I think, a responsibility to get informed ourselves, to walk our talk, and also, if you've got kids in your life and if you have family with kids, then please keep learning and looking at how you can introduce healthy foods, share healthy foods, make it fun and playful to be wholesome. We heard from Kushik Reddy, who said dementia and its response to food in life and lifestyle is a great example that confirms DNA is not destiny. Even if our fate is written in our DNA, it is written in pencil. Yes, Kushik, so true. Sue Davies said, I'm so happy to learn there's something I can do to prevent getting Alzheimer's disease, that it's not an inevitable consequence of aging or genetic roulette. Thank you so much for these interviews and all the positive, empowering information. And Diane Williams said, Hi team, I'm from Liverpool, England. I participated in the free summit last year, and my husband and I have made and are continuing to make lots of changes. We are far more informed, eating a far healthier diet, using less animal products and foods with chemicals, cut out most of the added sugar, reduced meat consumption, and here's the good news. Bob's cholesterol reduced the last 2 years from 5.2 to 3.8. Amazingly, his doctor still wanted to prescribe statins. When he asked about risk factors, the only one was his age. This year, I could not wait to purchase the package to help fund your program. Thanks so much for all you are doing. Incredible. Well, thank you, Diane, so much for your participation, and thank you for investing in our mission and getting the empowerment package. And thank you for applying this and sharing your incredibly heartening story. If you've just joined us, this is Ocean Robbins, and I am sharing a few welcoming words. We're going to be starting day 3 in the Food Revolution Summit in just a couple minutes now. Today's topic is food safety. Protect yourself from hidden dangers in our food supply. In a few moments, you'll hear us on the line with Andrew Kimbrell. At the top of the next hour, which is 9 a.m. Pacific Time, noon Eastern Time, 4 p.m. GMT, you'll hear from Carey Gillam. And an hour after that, you'll hear from Vani. As always, each interview will be expertly guided by my dad and colleague, John Robbins. Each one will last about 45 minutes and will be followed by questions, answers, reflections, and take-it-home insights. Now, I want to ask you, have you ever had the feeling that you can't totally trust how your food is growing or what's done to it? Do you ever worry about the impact of herbicides, pesticides, and chemicals in your food? Do you ever wonder what's safe and what's not? Do you feel concerned about the level of control that certain companies might have over how food is growing or even over government food policy? Do you ever wonder if there's anything important that the agrochemical companies don't want you to know? And do you ever wonder what you can do about it? Well, today, you're going to get some answers. You're going to get some insights. And you're going to get knowledge you need to stand up for safe food for everybody who eats. I am so excited for today's speakers. I am so grateful that we get this knowledge and we get to participate in the food revolution because it is time for the truth to be spoken. The food industry may want to keep us in the dark about what we're eating and where it comes from, but now it is time for the lights to come on. We'll begin with attorney Andrew Kimbrell in a moment. Welcome to the Food Revolution Summit, where we explore how you can heal your body and your world with food. This is Ocean Robbins, and I am joined by my dad and colleague, John Robbins, in welcoming our guest, Andrew Kimbrell. Andrew Kimbrell is founding director of Center for Food Safety and of True Food Network. He also serves as director of the International Center for Technology Assessment and co-founder of Foundation Earth. As an attorney, Andrews led numerous precedent-setting legal cases, including the court challenge that led the U.S. Supreme Court to force EPA regulation of greenhouse gases. Andrew also pioneered the legal strategy that led the Supreme Court to rule that DNA is not patentable. He's a leading voice challenging the spread of genetically engineered foods and the industrialized food system, and a champion for a safe and sustainable food supply for all of us. So now, Andrew, we are so grateful for this time with you. And now for the interview, I'm going to hand it over to my dad, John Robbins.
Well, thank you, Ocean, and thank you, Andrew, for being with us again.
Oh, it's a delight to be with you and all the great work that you two do. It's a delight to be with you again.
Well, I so admire your work and that of your colleagues. You work to safeguard organic foods and to protect the national organic standards. You work to protect farmers and public health and the environment from GMO crops that have been designed to tolerate massive doses of toxic herbicides. You work to keep drugs and harmful chemicals out of food animal production and off our plates. And you work to eliminate the use of bee-killing pesticides and to halt the sale and distribution of genetically engineered salmon and to protect wild fisheries and oceans. And you do so much work that's so important, and that is really difficult in today's political environment. And I want to thank you really for all that you're doing. And I want to ask you to start our conversation today, Andrew. What is it that you love about the work that you do?
You know, I think for all of us in the food movement, and in all taking part in the food revolution, I think what's so exciting is how empowering it is. You know, there's so much in our society that it's very difficult to really, impact, whether it be war and peace issues, whether it be what's happening often in the energy, worlds, what's happening, transportation, so many things seem out of our control right now. How do I affect this or how do I affect that? The great thing about the food movement is it's something that everybody can do every day. We can make a choice with our food dollars, whether we're going to say no to the incredible crime of animal agriculture in this country, the factory farms with 10 billion animals and their suffering. We can say, no, we're not going to do that. We can say, no, we're not going to buy GMO foods. We're not going to take part in this mass poisoning of our country with Roundup and other harmful herbicides. We can make a choice every day. We're not consumers, we're creators. And I think the reason we see this enormous growth and excitement in the food movement is more and more people saying, yes, I want to be a creator. I want to use my food choices to create a more humane world, more socially just world. I want to address climate change. I certainly want to make sure that we protect the biodiversity that we all, rely on, and our rivers and our streams, and of course the health of our children and communities. So it's empowering. It's something we can do every day. And also, food is so beautiful, and food is so wonderful. And so it's in sometimes dark times, the food movement remains kind of a beacon of light, I think, in that we're empowered, we're moving forward like I don't think very few people thought we ever could. And it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be part of the movement.
It is. It is an exciting time, and there is a tremendous sense of empowerment in making food choices that are in alignment with our health and the world's health at the same time. A lot of people wanting to do that look to find organic eggs and dairy products and meats, and those are available at many grocery stores today. Most people assume that the USDA organic label on these animal products means that the animals were raised humanely. But very recently, the USDA officially withdrew the rules that would have strengthened animal welfare requirements for organically certified meat and dairy. Andrew, when people buy USDA certified organic meat and dairy products and eggs, what assurance do they have, if any, that the animals were raised humanely?
I think we have a double duty when we're looking at organic. We've got to protect the standards. And we at the Center for Food Safety, we've been doing that, we help write the standards, we help protect them. So we've been involved in this for 20 plus years. But along with protecting the standards, we need to evolve the ethic. And, there's an organic ethic that is not yet reflected in organic practice. And so what are we talking about? Organic, not or beyond, but organic and beyond. So we're going to say organic, but organic has got to be humane. Organic has to be socially just. Organic has to protect biodiversity. Organic has to favor small scale, medium scale agriculture and local agriculture. And it has to be climate friendly. So we defend the standards because that's our beachhead. That's, the organic standards are the floor. They're not the ceiling. They're the floor of the future house of food that we're all building together. We need that floor. We protect it every day. But we need to build above it this humane, socially just, local, appropriate scale, biodiverse, climate-friendly agriculture. And that's what we're doing together. So basically, organic right now pretty much tells us what not to do. You cannot use synthetics and pesticides. You cannot use genetic engineering. You cannot use irradiation. But it doesn't really fulfill the ethic of what we should do. And one of those things is absolutely we should be humane. And it's very, very disappointing that after quite a while of coming to these humane standards that the USDA has now said, no, we're going to actually scotch those recommended standards after all this work and time was put into them. And we're not taking it lying down. We just sued the USDA last week saying you can't do that. That's illegal. You can't simply say we're not going to put this regulation in place. It's required by the National Organic Standards. It's required by the statute. So we're in court with them right now saying, no. You can't just get rid of humane standards. That was always part of the deal here. And by saying no, is that you're arbitrary, you're capricious, and you're acting illegally, USDA. So we're in court with them right now.
Well, I'm glad you are, and I'm sure our listeners are too. And is there anything we can do to help?
It's always important to, talk to your senators and the members of Congress to let them know that you feel strongly about this issue. Especially, for example, Debbie Stabenow in Michigan or Heidi Heidkamp. We need to be really strong and say, this means a lot to us. This is really, really important. There's just no way, and you two know this so well and have spoken so eloquently on it, but there's just no way, as I was saying, that we can underestimate the real crime. I mean, it's one of the great crimes of modernity, what we do to the animals in these animal factories. 10 billion animals a year going through needless and terrible suffering, even though it happens sort of out of sight. It's kind of like a cold evil. People see all these nice little wrap packages and the Happy Meal, in the McDonald's Happy Meal. That's actually the saddest meal in the world. And if people were to see, if they were, as I have, and you have perhaps, if you were to actually go to these slaughterhouses, look at what actually happens, any child that would see that would be running out of that McDonald's in horror if they realized what was behind that supposed Happy Meal. And so we massively reduce our consumption of meat. I think that's going to be better for all of our health. And if you do eat meat, make sure it's not industrial meat. Make sure that it's meat that's organic and either certified humane right now or animal welfare approved, at least until we can get decent humane standards in the organic standards.
Some people think that if they buy eggs from a place like Trader Joe's, they're safe. But there have been a series of recent protests over conditions at the farms that supply the supposedly humane eggs to Trader Joe's. And there's even a current lawsuit against the company calling Trader Joe's packaging intentionally misleading. The illustration on the egg carton shows hens in a spacious green pasture, but in reality, Trader Joe's hens are kept inside industrial hen houses, and they have no access whatsoever to green pastures like the ones printed on the carton. In fact, these hens live in packed warehouses with thousands of other birds and are never exposed to the outdoors. With Trader Joe's packaging and labeling of eggs so untrustworthy, and with the organic standard being compromised when it comes to the treatment of animals raised for meats, dairy products, and eggs, one option that's open to people who don't want misery on their menus is to eat a plant-based diet. And that's a path that an increasing number of people are taking today, often for health and environmental reasons as well. Andrew, if somebody wants to buy animal products, wants to eat some, and wants to be sure that they are the product of humane and sustainable systems, what's their best approach?
I think it's really important to come after these companies. We are in litigation with many of these companies, false advertising, mislabeling. What people want to do here, and it's sad, but not surprising, is they want to get the premium for saying they're organic or that they're humane when they're neither. And they get the premium, and then they go and they try and change the standards even at the federal level. The way to go here would be, and it's confusing. I know, folks, you go into your supermarket and there's 20 different things on your eggs. To us, it's organic and beyond, just as I was saying. If you're going to go ahead and do that, you want to make sure that the eggs are organic and, not or, humane, organic and either certified humane or animal welfare approved. Those are third-party certifiers. Full disclosure here, I'm president of the board of Humane Farm Animal Care, which oversees the certified humane label. I also am very, 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 happy with the animal welfare approved standards. So, that is, if you're going to do it, organic and, not organic or. So if that helps you in the supermarket, which I hope it does, that I think is the answer.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Is there a relationship between the treatment of animals in factory farms, the miserable conditions in which these animals are forced to live, and the many outbreaks we keep seeing of foodborne illnesses like Listeria and Salmonella and Campylobacter and even E. coli 0157?
Absolutely. The fact of the matter is, as I think many of your listeners know, there's gross misuse of antibiotics in the factory farm system. I actually shouldn't even call it factory farms. They're really not farms. When you look at these chicken houses, when you look at what's going on, what they do with raising pigs, these aren't farms. They're factories. And they use these animals pretty much as if they were commodities. And then when they're slaughtered, it's really, we've heard of the assembly line. It's really the disassembly line. We know now, because of the very courageous people that have gone into these animal factories. And yes, we've been co-plaintiffs and co-counsel in many of these ag-gag and overturning many of these ag-gag laws. For those not familiar with that, these are various states that have passed laws saying it's a felony for you to go in and actually photograph what's going on inside these horrifying factories. And we say no, we have a constitutional right to go in there. And we've been able to knock down several of these laws, but they're obviously so frightened because they know if people can actually see with their own eyes what's going on in these places, that would be enough for them to say no. I cannot be complicit in this great evil. I cannot do it. And so that's why those citizen journalists are such heroes, and many of our fellow groups, and why we have to together, and we are doing it, Center for Food Safety, co-counseling, co-plaintiffs in these lawsuits so that people can actually see what's going on. And part of that is the massive amounts of drugs and medications that are given to these animals in order so when they're in these incredibly close, cramped, cruel conditions that they continue to grow, that they try and protect them from all the diseases, of course. And, of course, all this leads is to mutations of these bugs, mutations of these bacteria. Then those bacteria get out. Many of them are resistant to all bacteria or other innovative measures, and then they come into the human population. Scientifically, these are the factories for these bugs that come into us and our children and create these antibiotic-resistant diseases and create a number of other diseases because of the hormones and the other medications that are in the animals that then we are consuming. I hope that we are empathetic enough and humane enough as a civilization to stop this really barbaric practice of animal factories. But even if we weren't, even if it weren't about just being empathetic and loving to our fellow creatures, we should do it just for our own benefit. Because we're going to see our antibiotics gone, we're going to see these other medications poisoning our rivers, poisoning our air, poisoning our bodies. And much less these huge lagoons of waste, which create methane, which exacerbates the climate chaos, climate change that we're in. Like most evils, it really comes back on the evildoer. And so we need to take responsibility for that, all of us, and the choices that we make. Every choice we make every day. Remember, you're a creator. We're going to create a future, a humane, sustainable future for these animals, or by the choices we make every day, we are going to continue this barbaric, cruel, and as you say, and absolutely correctly, a very dangerous system where we're going to see the ineffectiveness of antibiotics, ineffectiveness of the drugs, and we're going to be poisoning ourselves and the planet.
Some people will say that the conditions that the animals are kept in may be cruel, but they have compassion fatigue. There's so much wrong in the world. There's so much pain and suffering in the world. They just can't hold themselves responsible to try to address everything. And so they will look the other way about animal cruelty and industrial meat production. But I keep noticing that the more cruelly the animals are treated, the more intensely they're packed together, the more filthy the conditions are, then the more drugs have to be used to keep them alive under those conditions. And today, the industrial meat system is using 80% of the antibiotics produced in the United States and is clearly one of the driving forces behind the creation of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. How serious, Andrew, do you see this problem being?
Well, it's very serious. We have a whole program on animal drugs. You can get on our website. We have a study on not just antibiotics, right? Topamine, arsenic, you name it, chloroform, all the stuff that's being used, and all that's coming back at us. So again, even if you're hard-hearted and cold, I don't really care about that, which I hope you're not. But if for some reason that is your issue, then you should just, for the sake of your own health and that of your children, and for not wanting to be in a world where antibiotics are no longer effective for anything. Imagine that, because that's what we're very, very close to. That's how serious it is.
And that's a really serious issue. I think that all of Western medicine is based in some ways on controlling a pathogenic infectious disease with antibiotics. And if we lose that ability, which we've come to take for granted in the last 75 years, the consequences to human health will be dire.
Yeah, and there's a larger vision here, John, which is that so much of industrial life and industrial agriculture as well has been based in what I call the delusion of extermination. And what that means is that from the beginning it was thought if we can just eliminate, exterminate all those things that do not fit with this system, then the system will be just fine. So, for example, even indigenous people did not fit in the United States. So we'll get rid of them. And then in medicine, we know the problem, the bacteria. So in order to get rid of a bacterial disease, you know what we'll do? We'll give you something that kills all the bacteria. And then as industrial agriculture in the last 4 or 5 generations has come to the fore, you know what? We don't like these weeds, so we're just going to use these bios. They're not really pesticides. They kill everything. They kill butterflies. They kill humans. They're biocides. They kill living things. So it's indiscriminate. We're just going to kill all the weeds, kill all the insects, kill all the fungi. And it's this idea that somehow we could exterminate those parts of nature, eliminate those parts of nature that don't fit with the system. And you know what? It hasn't worked, and it won't work. because nature bats last, and nature bats 1,000. And so what's happening is we are at peak herbicides right now. Roundup was the last broad-spectrum herbicide, and now it's ineffective for a huge number of weeds in the majority of American farmland. It's becoming obsolete. And they're going back to 2,4-D, they're going with genetic engineered corn and soy, and they're going back to dicamba. These are much older, much more hazardous herbicides. So we're going backwards because there is no forwards. The same is happening with antibiotics. So what's the answer? The answer is don't think about elimination or extermination. Think about cooperation. And we're seeing this in medicine now with probiotics. Instead of trying to eliminate all the bacteria when something goes wrong, which, of course, is injurious in a lot of ways, what about probiotics? Is really nurturing our biome. We have 40 trillion cells in our body. They're not our body. They're the bacteria. They're our wonderful friends in our bodies. And the same in nature and the same in farming. Let's cooperate with these plants. They can be very, very useful, the ones that we call weeds. And, there's all sorts of ways to make sure that we control insects that are not necessarily the ones we want while encouraging beneficial insects and cooperating and learning more about the natural system and really putting aside forever this idea that the answer to our own bodies or the answer to nature is this delusion that we can exterminate our way to success. Not going to happen. We're going to need to cooperate with nature and our own nature, not exterminate it.
When you talk about the delusion of extermination, I'm thinking about if you spray weeds with a fatal dose of the same poison year in and year out, most of the weeds will die, which sounds good. But there is a very big Darwinian problem with this approach. And this is just basic science that if you do this year after year, a few genetic freaks will survive, and then they will pass the traits that allowed them to survive to their offspring, which just about guarantees that resistance genes will proliferate. It seems, Andrew, that we're stuck on a pesticide treadmill. And to me, this points to the critical importance of organic agriculture. My fear is that if we don't switch to organic and other non-polluting and regenerative ways of growing food, we're in danger of America the beautiful becoming America the poisoned.
That's absolutely right. This industrial system is a zombie system. Look at what it takes. And you can go through this very quickly. What does it take to grow a plant? You need water. You need soil. You need seed. You need the sun. You need a farmer. You need pollinators. And you can use animals for nitrogen. That's it. We have destroyed our soil, exhausted our water, monocultured our seeds, losing 70, 80, 90% of our seed variety, turned the sun into an enemy, decimated our farm communities, lost 10 million farmers in my lifetime, 5 million farms, and on the verge of getting rid of all pollinators through these poisons. So that's the industrial system, my friends. It is totally unsustainable. It cannot work. We don't have the soil for it. We don't have the water for it. It will not provide for us. So that system is already dead, but unfortunately, because of profit and because of entrenched thinking, it's a zombie that's still sucking the water, destroying the soil, torturing the animals, and creating climate change and killing our pollinators, and et cetera. It's not like, oh gosh, we have this future that's kind of, we hope, kind of new agey thing. No, we are going to have to go. Organic is going to have to be the basis for all American agriculture. We at the Center for Food Safety take that position openly. Organic is the floor of our agriculture. It has to be, or we're not going to have a functioning agriculture. Unfortunately, organic right now is under threat from some very serious forces.
You mentioned that we are on the verge of getting rid of our pollinators because of our use of so many chemicals and pesticides and biocides of all kinds. Bees and the other pollinators are responsible, it is estimated, for 1 out of every 3 bites of food that we eat. Albert Einstein once said, "When the last bee disappears, humans will disappear." And today, bees are dying in enormous numbers, and it increasingly seems that bee-killing pesticides, pesticides, are largely to blame. These pesticides, the neonicotinoids, are the most widely used insecticides in the world. Andrew, these bee-killing pesticides are clearly causing tremendous harm. What has been the response in the European Union, and what has been the response in the United States?
I wish I hadn't asked that question. It doesn't make the U.S. look too good. Yeah, there's obviously these neonicotinoids. These are nicotine-based insecticides, and they're neurotoxins. Right? That's how they work. They destroy the neurological aspects of an insect, and not just insects. We're looking at impacts on birds and ultimately on humans as well. These neonics, and the European Union said, "Hey, these are killing our bees. We need our bees, so there's a moratorium. We're not going to use this anymore." And when we asked for the same thing here in the United States, that actually didn't happen. And so we have been in litigation now for several years on a number of different cases, including one where we had a court recently hold that about 57 of these neonicotinoid pesticides were illegally approved. They were in the last stages of that. I mean, we're talking about 70, 80, 90% drop in some of these hives. I mean, this is colony collapse disorder. And we are seeing it all the way around the country. And it's serious for our agriculture. It's obviously serious for the beekeepers. It is a real threat to our food supply, our food security. Rachel Carson, in the last few pages of Silent Spring, her wonderful, groundbreaking book in 1963, written just as she was dying of cancer. Such a courageous pioneer for our movement, Rachel Carson. Now, she was the first person to say, let's stop using that word pesticides. It's biocides. And the idea that we should cover our country with biocides to kill some of these annoying pests that interfere with industrial agriculture, she called that ludicrous attempt Neanderthal biology, because, as you said, John, the insects will adapt, the weeds will adapt. It's simple adaptation. They teach adaptation here, and I checked this out, in the Washington, D.C. school system, where one of our main offices is, in the second grade. Monsanto said that no weeds would ever adapt to Roundup. So there would never be weeds that adapted. So Roundup was going to work forever. It lasted, what, in GMO crops, 15 years, and now 60% of our farmland has these super weeds you cannot kill with Roundup and many other herbicides, and it's become a real crisis for American farmers because, of course, Monsanto did not have the scientific acumen of a second-grade class in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I think they knew, but their eyes were so focused on what was profitable in the short term for them that they found ways to not notice the obvious, that this was going to undermine the ability of our farmers to grow food for us. But I don't know if you saw this, but there was a study that just came out in the scientific journal Environmental Science and Pollution Research. And it found that neonicotinoid biocides, the bee-killing poisons, are actually, in fact, less effective at defeating bugs than would be rotating crops and planting naturally resistant varieties. This new paper reviewed more than 200 studies on the topic and found that the use of these neonicotinoid biocides actually had very little effect on crop yields. And, as we were just talking about, you were just talking about, the pests quickly developed resistance to the chemicals.
Yeah, these are seed coatings. The vast majority of these are seed coatings. And you can get on our website, we also have a report out that shows that they're very ineffective for what they do. So think of the seed, like a corn seed, for example, as an M&M. And so what they do is they coat the seed with this insecticide, this biocide, and then when there's irrigation or rain, artificial irrigation or rain, that washes the coating off, and then it's sucked up into the plant through the water intake, and it gets into every cell of the plant. That's why they call them systemic pesticides, and we would call them systemic biocides. The problem is that about 95% of it washes away, and that's a problem for two reasons. One is not that much gets into the plant, so it's not an effective killer of these insects. And second of it is the rest of it gets washed into our rivers, gets washed into all sorts of ecosystems where it does enormous harm. These are neurotoxins. So it's not only ineffective, but incredibly harmful. Now, the EPA has said that because these, and you are absolutely correct, that it is the most widely used insecticide biocide in the world, but the EPA says we can't even regulate it because we don't regulate seed coatings. We only regulate it if you spray it. So for us, it's only a chemical that we need to regulate if you spray it, not if it's surrounding seed, which is ridiculous. And of course, because you can imagine, because that's a lot of what we do, we're currently we have a major legal challenge to that, obviously arbitrary and wrong decision of EPA. They're not even really being regulated, despite all of these impacts. This is, again, we see the bottom line of these corporations apparently getting the attention of our federal agencies rather than what their job should be, which is to defend us and the environment.
Mitch Daniels is the former Republican governor of Indiana. He is formerly worked for Monsanto before he was governor of Indiana. He recently wrote a piece in the Washington Post in which he said that the technologies of genetic engineering of the food supply are simply new refinements of cruder techniques that have been used for centuries. Now, you, on the other hand, have said that genetic engineering is to traditional crossbreeding what the nuclear bomb is to the sword. Can you explain?
Yes, there's nothing new here kind of approach to try and calm people down about genetic engineering. But the fact of the matter is that with genetic engineering, for example, it's actually been patented. Rather famous case, they took the antifreeze DNA of a flounder and they put it in a tomato to try and get tomatoes that would last longer when they were frozen and last longer on the shelf. And they have taken human genes and DNA and put them into pigs to try and create huge pigs. They try and take human DNA, growth DNA, and put it into salmon. Well, if you look throughout nature, I don't know, and perhaps maybe Mitch Daniels knows, but I don't know of an instance where a flounder has mated with a tomato. I do not know of an instance, and I don't even want to think about it, of a human mating with a salmon or a human mating with a pig. These are clearly, you're crossing not only species but kingdoms, and this has never been done before. It creates, because DNA is only part of the story, there's a zillion other elements in the cell, the RNA, the epigenetics, then there's the biome of the plant and the animal. This is a very complicated system. DNA is not the composer. DNA is not the conductor. It's not even the full orchestra. It's like the string section. So even then, you're just playing with one piece of it, and you're doing something never done before in nature, ever. As I noted, it can't happen through natural mating or through natural breeding. Cannot happen. And you're engineering in the dark because you're only dealing with one part of complex living things. That's one of the reasons why it's been such an incredible failure. They told us that they were going to create crops that would grow in the desert. They told us they were going to create crops that would fixate their own nitrogen out of the air. They told us they were going to crops with incredible nutrition that we'd never seen before. Nothing like that is happening because that's not how plants work. It's infinitely more complex. Biotechnology was no match for the complexity of nature. They were able to take some bacterial DNA, put them into corn and soy, and that allowed that corn, soy, cotton, and other crops to not be killed when they sprayed their chemical herbicides on it. That is 95% of what is out there. And yes, they created this apple that doesn't brown as quickly than what I call the Botox apple because you don't know how old it is. And actually, that browning is important to know the age. So why, if for 30 years of biotechnology we have a non-browning apple, that's our triumph. Obviously, it's a failed technology because the science behind it was wrong.
There's a new biotech development called gene drives. Monsanto and the other biotech companies are telling us that gene drives are a valuable tool to develop better foods and to protect the earth. What I want to ask you, Andrew, is first of all, what are gene drives? And secondly, are they worth the risk or are they likely to make matters worse and possibly far worse?
Pulling back for a second, the idea that the DNA, and this is all DNA work, right? This is taking DNA and driving out various traits or putting in various traits or using the so-called CRISPR chemical scissors to cut DNA more carefully. People may remember the Human Genome Project. We were supposed to have 100,000 plus genes because we're so complicated. We got trillions of synapses. Look at the complexity of the human body compared, to example, to a bacteria. Well, when they finally completed the Human Genome Project, it turns out we had less than 20,000 of these important DNA sequences that lead to proteins. Then they looked at corn. Corn has 30,000. Then they looked at the Pinot Noir grape. That is 40,000. Wheat has 100,000. So if you were to take the genes of, 4 Nobel Prize, Watson, Crick, Berg, Borlaug, they don't have as much genetic material as one wheat plant. So it turns out that DNA is not the secret to our complexity. And it also turns out that we share about 98, 99% of our DNA with mice. We share about 70% of it with sea urchins. And there are a couple of bacteria around that have 100 times more DNA than we do. So this idea that DNA, you can just snip DNA, the DNA is going to give you traits that you can then drive in or out of organisms to create more nutritious, better plants, it's Neanderthal biology. But they get a lot of investment for CRISPR or for gene drives, and it makes front page news. But it's really not cutting edge science anymore. Anybody who really is working in biology today knows that these are reductionist, really almost nonsensical claims. Whether it be to try and cure cancer or to create a better plant, you're going to have to deal with RNA. You're going to have to deal with epigenetic responses. You're going to have to deal with this interaction of the organism with the environment, and you're going to have to deal, like with the human, with the biome. We have more, as I said, we have more cells in our body from these bacteria than we have cells. We have about 30 trillion cells in the human body. We've got about 40 trillion cells that are the biome, all these bacteria in us. So this is a very complex system. All these claims you're hearing are really nonsensical. I'm not afraid they're going to succeed. They're not going to succeed. What I'm afraid of is, since they're engineering in the dark and they're going to be releasing a lot of these organisms and mosquitoes, the thing about biological pollution versus chemical pollution is that when you put a living thing into the environment, whether it be a bacteria or a plant or a genetically engineered salmon, when that gets out, you can't recall it. Unlike chemical pollution, it will not dilute necessarily over time. It will reproduce, it will mutate, and it could go on forever. So this is really the problem. We always think of chemical pollution, but we've got to get our heads around the fact that biological pollution is equally, in some cases, more dangerous. If these salmon get out there, and we know because of the cranial deformations, the other issues with the new DNA in them, that they cause 1/3 greater death in the offspring. They get out there, they could cause extinction, and you can't recall them. There's no way to go out in the ocean and get them back. There's no way to go out into a field and recall genetically engineered bacteria or genetically engineered plants when they spread. They will spread, and we will not be able to stop them. That is why, if there was ever an instance for the precautionary principle, it is with genetic engineering and these biological techniques. And unfortunately, we're not using it, and that's what's kept us busy at the Center for Food Safety for many, many years, blocking them in courts, blocking them in any way we can in order to stop this potential biological pollution from becoming disastrous.
I'm in awe of the work you're doing. I'm also in awe of the power of science to understand and sometimes to manipulate nature. We have much to thank science for, enormous improvements in our lives. And at the same time, when science is in the hands of people whose intention and isn't the public good, isn't the welfare of the earth community, isn't concerned at all with human health or well-being, then that power that science has can be misused, can be very, very destructive and harmful. And the companies that are using genetic engineering to manipulate the food supply are by and large chemical companies, agrochemical companies. They manufacture the biocides that Rachel Carson warned us about. They sell. Their business model depends on selling more and more of the very poisons that are polluting all of our bodies and the entire web of life. So to me, the fact that it is Monsanto and Bayer, who are, by the way, merging right now, apparently, that are in control of these technologies, that frightens me.
Yeah, here's the good news. The good news is that when so many of the people listening to this, I know you were all part of the Army, where we went and said in America, we need to have what 64 other countries have. We need to have these genetically engineered foods labeled. Now, the industry went crazy against that, and we know why. Because genetically engineered foods don't offer any member of the public anything. They don't offer better taste, lower cost, more nutrition, nothing. Better flavor, nothing. All they offer is more risk because there's greater biocide residue on them, and because these genetic mutations may be harmful. So why would any rational consumer, walk into a store and pick a GMO if it was labeled, a GMO product over a non-GMO product, knowing I'm paying the same price and all I'm getting is more risk and more biocide pollution? They wouldn't, because this is a technology that's failed in the marketplace. That is why they were so terrified of labeling. Well, we had close losses in a few states, and then Vermont went ahead with labeling, and that was going to come due, and then Connecticut and Maine, and all the activists did such a great job. We at Center for Food Safety wrote most of these bills, and we pushed them and got some funding to get this stuff passed. Then something amazing happened. Because of the millions that spoke out, because members of Congress were alerted to the strength of the food movement, the GMA, the Grocery Manufacturers Association, this huge trade organization, began to crack apart. And Nestle's left, which was one of their biggest, they pay fees into this organization. That's how the Grocery Manufacturers Association survives, fees. And then Kraft, Heinz left, Campbell's left, Mars left, Unilever left, Hershey's left, Tyson's Food left, Dow DuPont even left. But with most of these, they said we left because we want to be on the side of transparency and we support GMO labeling. And in February, the president of the GMA resigned. And GMA submitted comments to the USDA that said we want a good definition of genetically engineered or bioengineered foods, and we support labeling. So now, any day now, because the deadline, statutory deadline is July 29th, folks. I want everyone to listen to this. The USDA has to come out with a proposed rule. Our biggest opponent, our work, all of our work, has brought to their knees. The GMA is now fractured. Huge, major companies now support GMO labeling and support transparency and have left the GMA in protest to their anti-transparent. Now the GMA is so frightened that they're losing all these industries, have come to our point of view in almost all of these areas. So we're hoping for a really good rule. It's going to come out any day. It has to be finalized by July 29th, 2018. And so listen to the Center for Food Safety or your favorite food group involved. You're going to be asked to comment to the USDA, to comment to your senators. If it's a good rule, we're going to say, let's go with it. If it's bad, we're going to fix it. And we're going to come together as a food movement once again. And once we give people a choice, once we say you get to choose whether you're going to have a GMO food, because every food out there that's GMO is going to have to be labeled, mandatory labeling, then I think we'll see what really happens with the technology. Let's see if this technology can really survive in the marketplace. My guess is no. And that's why labeling is the Achilles heel. But it's going to happen now. 2018 will be the year where we get labeling, we get transparency, we get to choose, our right to choose defended or not. And we're all, every one of us is going to be responsible for continuing this victorious path towards our right to know.
Well, may it be so. I think all of our listeners, or most all of them, certainly will want that to occur, and will be cheering you on and applauding your efforts and all of our efforts, and we'll be joining with comments and conversation. And I think that this understanding that we need to have labeling of GMO foods and that non-GMO certified foods are a step very much in the right direction. And then a bigger step is to eat organically grown foods. And then there are steps even beyond that we can take. I see us, hopefully anyway, rebuilding the EPA so that it becomes completely independent from industry and politics. And I see us removing incentives for the huge scale, chemically dependent corporate agriculture. And I see us addressing the underlying problems by encouraging small family farms and agriculture without chemical warfare. Andrew, what else do you see?
You put it so well, John. I think that we have tools. We have all of our dollars in the marketplace. We need to use them wisely, conscientiously, morally. And then we also have litigation and we have policy in that war. Those are the tools that we have, organizing and litigation. But I think that we also need to, that's sort of stopping the bleeding, and that's, we need to save the bees, stop the GMOs, stop the biocides. But I think we also need to have an accompanying change of consciousness.
And what would that be? What are the features of the consciousness that we have now that need to change? And what would be the features of the consciousness that we need to grow into in order to really be healthy and create a healthier world?
Well, people are always talking about efficiency. Efficiency means minimum input and minimum time for maximum output, right? Everyone talks about efficiency. And that's fine for a machine. But if I told you I treated my two kids, my daughter and my son efficiently, minimum input of affection, minimum input of care for maximum good grades, that would be horrible. I love dogs, and my dogs are the most inefficient creatures ever, John. I give them massive amounts of love and affection and food, healthy organic food, and they don't produce any work at all. We do not treat those things that we care about based on efficiency, do we? We treat living things that we care about with love, with empathy, participation. Plants and animals are living things. The soil is a living thing. They're not machines. We have to get out of this mechanomorphism that we think of animals. I mentioned the disassembly line, and this. They are treated as if they were machines, these animals. They're not. They're living, sentient creatures that we approach through empathy, right? Not efficiency. The second thing is competition. Oh, Andy, if we do everything you're talking about, how are we going to compete, right? Well, what if I said I teach my kids competitively? And my daughter comes in with an A and my son comes in with a C, and I go, oh, Nicholas, you're the weakest link. Goodbye. We always go forward, and we have from the beginning of time through cooperation. And the fact that we have CSAs, the fact that we have cooperatives, the fact that we're seeing all this coming together in the food movement, is farmers markets, people caring about where it comes from, and actually spending their dollars in this way is absolutely tremendous. It really shows where we need to go. And I think the other thing we have to get out of our heads, so we balance efficiency with love and empathy, we balance competition with cooperation, and most importantly for me is we begin to understand that progress does not equal technology. Progress equals how more and more closely we can conform our economy, our lives, and embed our economy and lives in ecology and nature and the natural laws that are immutable. Because if we don't, we're not going to be here for too much longer.
I really love what you're saying about progress not equaling technology. And I'm hearing something that we as a food movement can do, and in fact are already doing to some extent, that involves a shift in our understanding of what success and progress are really about.
We, as a food movement, we can redefine progress, and we've already done it. Organic says no to chemical technology. It says no to GMO and biological technology, and it says no to irradiation and nuclear technology. It says saying no to those technologies is actually progress. And I go to campuses all across the country and speak to food groups, and they all say, yes, that's progress. So that's a revolution in thinking. That's a revolution in consciousness that we in the food movement are bringing together. So those of us who care so much about animal welfare, we're saying no to the efficiency model, yes to the empathy model. We're saying yes to the coming together as a food community and not as, how can we make food cheapest dollar to be more competitive? And we come together with a new consciousness saying we will redefine what progress means. Progress doesn't mean animal factories. It doesn't mean patenting life forms. It doesn't mean covering our land in toxic biocides. No, that's not our vision.
It's not our vision. And you're proposing a different vision, a beautiful vision, and one that I feel very deeply aligned with. And I so appreciate, Andrew, what you're saying, what you're giving to us here. And I also know that there are forces at work in our world today that are obstructing what you and I and the food movement are working for. They're fighting it, and they're causing great harm, and they're placing life on earth in peril. Sometimes when I read the news and see some of the greed and idiocy that's taking place, I can become morose. I feel burned out. I get depressed. What I want to ask you, Andrew, is do you ever feel depressed in the face of current events?
My brother, when I lost a lawsuit years ago on bovine growth hormone, and I was so despondent because I knew it would impact on the cows. And I said, because I'd worked on a dairy farm for 4 years, and I said, 4 summers, and I said, God, I'm so depressed. And he said, you wanted to be successful. And I said, you bet. He said, Andy, you're not required to be successful. You're required to be faithful. You have a vision. You believe, and you've worked to have that vision. And all you're required to do is what you can to be faithful to that vision. The rest is outside of your pay scale. That's not who, we're just required to be faithful. And it's not about victory. It's in acting in a way that merits victory. And then be at peace. Be at peace. If you're faithful, you're acting in a faithful way, and walk that path in peace and enjoy that we're privileged to do that. And and don't worry about success, and don't worry about all of that, And that's really why I don't get burned out. I took that advice to heart. As you two, I can hear it in your voices and see it in you. We literally feed on the nurturing of the work.
Yes.
And our faithfulness to the ideals that we have. And I don't get burned out for that reason.
Andrew, you and your colleagues at the Center for Food Safety are in the front lines of the effort to redefine progress and to shift our consciousness and our culture away from a predatory and exploitive relationship to life, to the earth community, to other people, to one that's more based in respect and reverence for life. And your efforts to protect our food and our environment, I see you being true champions of a better world, of a safe and clean and healthy food supply, and a safe and clean and healthy future. There's an old saying: healthy soil, healthy food, healthy people. If we are ever going to create a world with healthy soil and healthy food and healthy people, it will be thanks to you and to millions of people who listen to you and put your knowledge and your wisdom and your caring into action. On behalf of Ocean and myself and really everyone who plans on eating food for the rest of their lives, I want to thank you, Andrew, for your stunning perseverance, your unflagging commitment, your brilliant insights, and for your love and for being with us today.
Well, John, love right back at you and Ocean. The great work you do is so important to get the word out, and you've been stalwart for all these decades, and it's just a privilege to talk with you and to share this great journey that we have, this creating a new food future for ourselves, the rest of the living things on this earth, and the planet itself. It's a privilege to be in this work, and it's a privilege to work with people like you two.
We've been talking with public interest attorney and Center for Food Safety founding director Andrew Kimbrell. Andy, in a food world that has become in so many ways toxic, yours is a voice of clarity, sanity, and wisdom. We thank you so much for your passionate, humane, and deeply humanizing insights, for your leadership, and for your partnership in the food revolution.
Ocean, thank you so much. And again, thank you for your work. And such a pleasure to be with you again and take part in this wonderful effort that you guys do every year. Just tremendous.
Thank you so much to Andrew and to my dad and colleague, John Robbins, for that incredibly galvanizing as well as informative conversation. To express your opinions on what you've been hearing and to find out what other people are saying, post and engage in the comments section on our broadcast page. Make sure to refresh the comments using the button that's provided there so that you can see the most recent comments that have been submitted. Our next presentation will be an interview with Carey Gillam. It'll start at the top of the next hour, 9 a.m. Pacific Time, noon Eastern, 4 p.m. GMT, followed by Vani at the top of the hour after that. I know that some people are still today experiencing some audio interference in there as they're listening, and I want to apologize for that. Our team is working hard to figure it out and coordinating with YouTube and seeing what we can learn here. We're doing our best, and thank you for your patience and hanging in with us. And I also want to let you know that the replays will be free of that issue, at least on the individual players for the individual interviews, and also the empowerment package will be free of those issues. But of course, we want you to be able to hear us right here and right now cleanly and clearly. I'll also say that the telephone lines are not having these issues, but we're working it out, and thank you for your patience and for your presence in this summit. And now I want to share and respond to a few of the comments we've been receiving. Cecilia Poole said, "This is such important work you're doing on behalf of our health, ultimately the future of our world. Thanks to everyone involved." Thank you, Cecilia. And let me also thank you for your participation, because we are doing this work together. And I am so grateful that you are in it with us. We heard from Lee Dublin, who shared something I think may be on a lot of people's minds. Firstly said, "Thanks for this. John does such an amazing job interviewing and asking the questions that I want answers to. Andrew Kimbrell's insights are enlightening and hopefully the wave of the future. How do we change the system Are we doomed? Well, Lee, to quote Paul Hawken, if you look at the science about what is happening on Earth and you aren't pessimistic, you don't understand the data. But if you meet the people who are working to restore this Earth and the lives of the poor, and you aren't optimistic, you haven't got a pulse. What I see everywhere in the world is ordinary people who are willing to confront despair, power, and incalculable odds in order to restore some semblance of grace, justice, and beauty to this world. So no, Lee, I do not think we are doomed. But I can tell you one thing. If we continue in the direction we're going, we are going to end up where we're headed. And in a toxic food culture, the path of least resistance is a fast track, even a superhighway to suffering, disease, and death. But can we change course? Absolutely. Every single one of us can, and so can our society. At the end of the day, we don't work for the food industry. The food industry works for us. So if we want safe and healthy food, then we can invest in a safe and healthy food system. We can support organic, humane, sustainable, healthy food by making conscious choices about what we take into our own bodies. I believe we are approaching and we are creating a tipping point where healthy food isn't just for weirdos or radicals or revolutionaries, it's for everybody. We are out to shift the status quo. Renee Howard said, "My daughter recommended that I listen to your Food Revolution Summit. I'm so thankful to the Robbins for putting this together in such a thoughtful and sensible format. I have learned more in 3 days than I have in 3 decades. Now I have some great tools to be healthy, happy, and living." Again, thank you. Thank you so much, Renee. We heard from Hannah Butterworth, who said, "Thank you for empowering me to become an active consumer through this summit. I have been really enjoying it so far, and I am grateful for the 21-hour replay that lets me catch up after school." Well, Hannah, we are so grateful you are part of this summit, and we want to help you catch up after school and anytime you want. So we are making you this segment's Empowerment Package recipient. Our team will be in touch with you, and now you will own the MP3s and the transcripts, plus the Spanish translations, plus $2,800 worth of bonuses for life. Congratulations. We'll be in touch. And congratulations also to all of our most recent new Empowerment Package buyers. Sashiko from Washington, Elizabeth from New Mexico, Joan from Wisconsin, Michaela from Nebraska, Darian from Utah, Kim from Pennsylvania, Betty from Oregon, Catherine from Iowa, and everybody else who was stepping forward to own this for life and participate in this revolution. In a few moments, we will be on the line with veteran journalist and former Reuters senior correspondent Carey Gillam. As an investigative journalist covering large-scale food corporations for several decades, Carey gained access to inside knowledge from Monsanto and other big agrochemical companies. She learned some critically important things that I think everyone needs to know. So I am so looking forward to our conversation with her in just a few minutes now. We heard from Philame Lilio, who said, "I am in shock over this information I never knew existed. I will become an active consumer. The dangers in GMOs are horrifying." Well, yes, thank you for learning. Thank you for becoming an active consumer. And yeah, some of what we're facing is pretty horrifying. It's really frightening sometimes and disturbing and agitating to face what we're up against. And I want to thank you for having the courage to learn and engage and participate in this journey. It can be hard sometimes. There's an old saying that sometimes ignorance is bliss, right? But we also know that knowledge is a greater bliss because it can empower health and vitality and wellness. And that's what we're about here, is to really empower you with the knowledge and ultimately the bliss that comes from vitality that you deserve. We heard from Carol Berard, who said, "My husband, a non-believer with a she said bad food diet, was left with no option but to listen to the Food Revolution while traveling in our car for 3 hours one way to and from our parents' house this weekend. Thanks to you, he has taken the first step and now wants to eat more fruits with flax and chia seeds. He also wants to lose some weight and not turn into a dinosaur. Most important of all, he has opened his mind and is willing to listen to more. Thank you." Well, Carol, thank you for sharing with your husband and sharing with us. We all have loved ones, and many of them don't eat or think exactly the way that we might like. And we all get to share what we're learning with the people we love in the ways that make sense. And some of them are open-minded and eager to hear all they can, and others of them are a little resistant sometimes. So thank you for sharing your journey in your family system. And, I think that there's the old saying that pain pushes and vision pulls. So some people are motivated by suffering, by fear, by not wanting to be sick. Other people are motivated by wanting to thrive, wanting to be well. And frankly, some people are motivated by compassion, by caring about the future of life on this planet. So whatever it is that motivates you, I want to thank you for putting your motivation into action. And I want to thank you for sharing with the people that you love and finding the points that matter to them so that you can be an ally to their values. In a moment now, you're going to hear us on the line with Carey Gillam. But first, a short message about Food Revolution Network's mission. At Food Revolution Network, our mission is healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for everyone who eats. We want kids to learn about healthy food in school. We want doctors to learn how nutrition impacts health in medical school. We want the routine use of antibiotics banned from factory farms. We want a world where everyone, regardless of their ethnic or economic background, has knowledge of and access to healthy food for their family. We want a world in which heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, obesity, and diabetes are rare, and in which vibrant health is the status quo. We're spreading the word and standing for change. And with every empowerment package purchased, we make a donation to Trees for the Future, enabling them to plant an organic fruit or nut tree in a low-income community. Join this movement and support this mission. Welcome to the Food Revolution Summit, where we explore how you can heal your body and your world with food. This is Ocean Robbins, and I am joined by my dad and colleague, John Robbins, and welcoming our guest, Carey Gillam. Carey Gillam is a veteran journalist, researcher, and writer with 20 years of news industry experience, focused on digging into the big business of food and agriculture. As a senior correspondent for Reuters International News Service, Carey uncovered biotech, agrochemical, and pesticide industry secrets that impact the health and safety of millions of people worldwide. Now she serves as the research director for U.S. Right to Know. Her latest book, which has not made Monsanto particularly happy, is Whitewash, the story of a weed killer, cancer, and the corruption of science. So now, Carey, my dad and I are so grateful for your brilliant work, and we're so glad to have this time with you. And now for the interview, I'm going to hand it to my dad, John Robbins.
Well, thank you, Ocean, and thank you, Carey, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
You were, at one time, a consumer of Monsanto's Roundup. You used it in your suburban backyard liberally. And then as a journalist, you became a fan of Monsanto's then Chief Technology Officer, Rob Fraley, and you enjoyed many conversations with Brett Begeman, who's now the president and the COO of Monsanto. You've been welcomed inside the high-tech labs, the greenhouses, and the corporate offices of Monsanto, and also of some of the other largest U.S. agribusinesses. But now, Carey, you've written a book that directly challenges Monsanto. What do you want to be sure people who are listening to us now understand as we begin this conversation?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I guess the main thing is for people to understand that I didn't come to this with any preconceived notion. When I started covering food and agriculture for Reuters in 1998, I had been a banking reporter. I didn't know very much about how our food is grown or about the pesticides that are used, in conventional agriculture. I thought GMOs sounded kind of cool, right? They'd just been introduced. by Monsanto, and were quickly being licensed and adapted by other companies as well. So I really was very eager, and I say in my book, sort of wide-eyed, and did spend a lot of time, early on with Monsanto, with the executives and their scientists and their marketing team, as well as with, people from DuPont and Syngenta, and then, of course, farmers and scientists and agronomists and, and others. And I really started expanding my knowledge on this industry. And it was really over many years that I saw that the storyline that we get from the big seed and chemical companies, is not certainly the straight story. And there's a lot that's been hidden, a lot of the risks, a lot of the dangers, a lot of manipulation that's gone on, and a lot that's been intentionally done to deceive consumers. So, and that, led me really to write the book then, Whitewash.
Which I'm glad you've done. It's a real contribution to our conversation and in the world. And to public health. When you mentioned the risks and the dangers that have been hidden, I'm thinking about how for nearly half a century now, the International Agency for Research on Cancer has been charged under the auspices of the World Health Organization to draw up an inventory of carcinogens, cancer-causing substances. And on March 20th, 2015, the agency announced findings that left the whole world stunned. It declared the most widely used pesticide on the planet to be genotoxic, meaning it causes DNA damage, and declared it to be carcinogenic to animals and a probable carcinogen for humans. Carey, ever since that day, ever since the day this prestigious international team of science experts declared glyphosate to be a probable human carcinogen, it seems that Monsanto and its allies have undertaken a relentless onslaught targeting the agency's findings and seeking to undermine the agency's work. It seems to me, honestly, that in order to save glyphosate, the Monsanto Corporation and its allies have undertaken an effort to destroy the credibility of the United Nations Cancer Agency by almost any means possible. Carey, do you agree with that, or do you see it differently?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, that is certainly what we've seen. Now, understand the International Agency for Research on Cancer, which is part of the World Health Organization. And this is leading international cancer scientists who are brought together from all around the world. These people didn't do new research, and yes, it stunned the world and it really made quite of an impact when they said that this looks like a probable human carcinogen. They classified glyphosate as a probable human carcinogen. But they were really looking at research that, to those of us who had been following this, we were well aware of this research that had been building over the years: toxicology, epidemiology, mode of action, a whole range of research studies and lines of inquiry that had been done by numerous scientists around the world over decades. And that's what this agency looked at. They took all of this relevant, published, peer-reviewed research and analyzed it and weighed it and came to the conclusion, as you said, that there was limited evidence in epidemiology. Specific ties were found to non-Hodgkin lymphoma. There was sufficient evidence seen in studies with experimental animals, the toxicology. And then they saw, strong evidence of glyphosate association with DNA and chromosomal damage in human cells. So, they didn't at the time consider this particularly controversial, these scientists. They were just looking at published science, and this was their conclusion, and they felt it was quite sound. But Monsanto, who had been discrediting all of this research over the years, was locked and loaded and ready to go to try to tear down the credibility of this international agency. And we see that in their internal documents, that have come to light. We have internal documents both from EPA, USDA, and FDA, and then we have internal Monsanto documents that have come to light through litigation that show they knew and expected this cancer agency would find glyphosate to be a probable human carcinogen because they knew about the research, they knew what it showed, and they laid out a plan to tear this agency apart. And that's what they've been doing ever since March of 2015. And, It's very disheartening because this is our front line, against cancer, to understand the risks and the hazards associated with substances that can cause cancer. And golly, I know a lot of people who have cancer, and you probably do too. And I don't think we should be tearing down the reputations of cancer scientists in order to bolster, the sales of pesticides.
I don't think we should be either. Monsanto, though, seems committed to doing so in multiple ways. A few months after the declaration by the IARC that glyphosate is a probable human carcinogen, many of the scientists who were on the panel that made that declaration received a letter from Monsanto's law firm demanding that they hand over all the files and documents related to their work to Monsanto's attorneys. And the scientists were not amused. One of them replied, "I found your letter intimidating and noxious, and I find your approach reprehensible and lacking in common courtesy even by today's standards." And another scientist on the panel that declared glyphosate to be a probable human carcinogen wrote back to Monsanto's attorneys, "I consider your letter pernicious because it maliciously seeks to instill anxiety and apprehension in an independent group of experts." Carey, are you aware of any corporation ever before so crudely and viciously attacking such a prestigious scientific agency?
I really am not. And if they have, we certainly have not seen many reports of it. This international agency, as I said, they have been really caught off guard and stunned. I've talked to them. They've issued public statements trying to defend themselves. They really have been taken aback at the levels that Monsanto and its chemical industry allies have gone to attack it. And, as Monsanto laid out, they had an internal plan that has come to light through the litigation before this agency even met, before the IARC scientists even met. And they laid out a plan that they said they wanted to orchestrate outcry against IARC. And they laid out the different strategies they would use, the different individuals, the front groups that they would employ, so that it would look like independent experts were criticizing IARC when, in fact, these were sort of secret soldiers for Monsanto. It's all designed, as I said, as sort of a malicious attack on this agency, designed simply to protect the profitability of this product. And they've convinced several U.S. lawmakers, Representative Lamar Smith, sort of leading the charge to take up the battle cry for Monsanto and try to strip funding from this cancer agency. It's been quite successsul. They've planted stories in news agencies, including Reuters, my former employer, false news stories. So it's pretty egregious, the levels that they've gone to in this.
They seem to be polluting the public understanding, and they are polluting our regulatory agencies, controlling them, and with information that really isn't accurate. Ramon Seidler is a microbiologist who was the senior scientist and the leader of the EPA's biosafety program. He says, and this is a quote, "These pesticide companies claim they're helping to feed the world. That is a bunch of garbage. They're just helping themselves sell more products, and those products are deadly. Glyphosate should be banned entirely, but the industry has brainwashed folks in key decision-making positions in Washington." That's his statement. Carey, scientists typically express themselves very cautiously. It's part of the discipline of their work. What would lead such an eminent scientist as Dr. Seidler to be that outspoken?
Well, as I said, the evidence that has come out with respect to glyphosate and Monsanto, the science, the manipulation of the science, the collusion that has taken place between Monsanto and officials within the EPA, and that apparently, that looks like perhaps has also taken place in Europe with European regulators. There's discussion of ghostwriting that Monsanto has discussed internally and bragged about with papers that regulators have relied on for years. It's this very broad net, really, or web, I suppose, that Monsanto has woven to, manipulate and to confuse all of us, really, the public, consumers, lawmakers, regulators, and to create doubt. I mean, the tobacco industry is most famous, I guess, for this tactic, creating doubt, manufacturing doubt around its products. We've seen it in pharmaceutical, we've seen it with oil and gas, and we're certainly seeing it with the agrochemical industry with Monsanto. And as I make the case in my book, and I like to point out to people, it isn't just Monsanto and it isn't just this one pesticide. If Monsanto went away tomorrow or this pesticide glyphosate was pulled from the market, we still have a lot of dangerous pesticides that are being pushed by very big and powerful corporations to pervasive levels in our food supply. Dow Chemical and chlorpyrifos is a really good example right now. It's been shown to have neurodevelopmental damage to children's brains. And the EPA has even said they can no longer vouch for the safety of this insecticide in food and water, and yet it's the fourth most prevalent pesticide found in our food, as sampled by the FDA. And Dow Chemical has convinced the Trump administration to keep it on the market. So, this goes on in Washington, D.C., sadly for all of us.
Well, corporations such as Monsanto and Dow are making billions, but it's my view that they're doing so by taking away our right to be free from harm. They aren't just poisoning people and our farms and our food. I mean, it's undeniable that we've allowed our food and our water and our soil and our bodies and our children even to become dangerously exposed to these chemicals. Pesticide pollution knows no boundaries. Pesticide sprays contaminate entire ecosystems. But these companies, Monsanto and Dow, as we've mentioned, and the others, aren't just poisoning people. They're also poisoning regulatory systems and science and corrupting governments, or at least that's how I see it.
Right. I mean, definitely. That's what we're seeing. These ghost-written papers that are presented to regulators, this discrediting of anybody who's doing independent science. It's systemic, and we've got evidence dating back to the late 70s and the early 1980s with Monsanto and glyphosate about how they have manipulated the science. We had it very early on. We had a study that was submitted, that Monsanto itself submitted to the EPA, looking at mice who had been exposed to glyphosate, and the EPA scientists were concerned because they saw all these, rare tumors in the mice exposed to glyphosate, and they said this looks like it could cause cancer, and they wanted to classify it as possibly carcinogenic back in the 80s. And Monsanto protested and arm twisted and argued, and eventually the EPA's own toxicologists were overruled, and the EPA has stuck to the line that it's not likely to be carcinogenic, ever since the 90s, and they've just reiterated that lately, despite all the evidence to the contrary. These companies have a lot of power and a lot of sway with our regulators, and it shouldn't be that way. They are supposed to work for us, right? As I like to say, they're supposed to be accountable to us, but that doesn't seem to be the way that it's working, unfortunately, in Washington, which is why people need to be engaged and informed and aware and, motivated, I guess, to try to hold our officials accountable for public safety.
It can be painful to recognize that our regulatory agencies aren't fully protecting us. They are there to protect public health, but both the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which annually test thousands of food products for hundreds of different types of pesticide residues, have routinely refused to test for glyphosate, even though it's now the most widely used agricultural chemical in world history, and one, as we've been speaking, that's been formally deemed a probable human carcinogen by the WHO. In a few years ago, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, raised the legally allowed amount of glyphosate residues, the amount allowed in food in the United States, to levels that were far higher than in any other countries. Carey, while the USDA and the FDA have been declining to test for glyphosate residues, has the EPA repeatedly approved industry requests for higher and higher allowable levels of glyphosate residues in food?
You see that in EPA documentation. Monsanto goes back and says we, want it to be legal for these higher residues of glyphosate to be found in these particular foods, and the EPA has approved that. And as you said, we have levels that are legally allowable here in the United States that are far higher than are allowed in other countries. And ironically, maybe that's not the right word, our agencies that are supposed to be a check on this, as you said, USDA and FDA, don't do the testing that they are supposed to do. Annually, they look at thousands of food samples, each agency, and they look for different pesticide residues and measure those to see if they are within these legal limits that are set by the EPA. But you're right, they have declined to test for glyphosate. Only once in its history has the USDA tested for glyphosate. That was in 2011. They did what they called a special project. They looked at 300 soybean samples. Almost all of them had glyphosate residues, and the USDA declined to ever test again. Now, we've seen through internal documents they were supposed to resume testing for glyphosate in 2017. They were getting ready to go, and at the last minute, we don't know who or why, someone killed that testing project. FDA, similarly, had not done any testing until 2016. It was criticized heavily by the Government Accountability Office for leaving glyphosate out of its residue testing. So they said they would start some limited testing. They got that underway. One of their senior FDA chemists found glyphosate levels at illegally high levels in honey products he pulled from store shelves, and he also found it in oatmeal products. Baby food oatmeal. And when that became public, I got documents. It's basically how it became public. The FDA certainly didn't share it with consumers. But when they were forced to admit it was true, they suddenly suspended the glyphosate testing program and pulled that FDA chemist from further testing. And I've gotten a recent memo that says that they sure don't want anybody looking at honey again in 2018. So, this is our government actively working not to provide us with information about levels of this pesticide in our food supply. And the only reason that we know it's in our food supply is because academics and private consumer groups have started testing for it and have been finding it in flour and soy and an array of snack products, and bread and cookies and crackers and things like that. And it's even found in drinking water and bottled water, for instance. So it's pretty pervasive, and it's pretty clear our government agencies are not doing their jobs to test for this.
Which leaves us without their protection, which many of us assume that we do have. You have a chapter in your book called Weed Killer for Breakfast. Now, that's an alarming thought. So what I want to ask you, Carey, is two things. To what extent is our food supply right now contaminated with glyphosate? And what can people do who want to avoid eating it?
Well, and I say it's very hard, in my opinion, to have solid data to know the extent of contamination. So we know anecdotally, for instance, that a researcher in North Dakota tested flour samples for glyphosate and found all of them had glyphosate residues. We know testing in Europe has found glyphosate widely in bread products. We know it's been tested and found in wine. We know it's been tested, as I said, in a whole array of cereals and snacks and products like that. But because we don't have these government agencies doing this sustained annual robust testing, we don't have a good solid database of this information. We have anecdotal information. And that's worrisome enough because the anecdotal shows it to be pervasive. It's found in human urine very commonly. San Diego University of Medicine researchers not too long ago reported that they had been tracking glyphosate levels in humans, primarily through dietary exposure, and they found that these glyphosate levels over time had risen dramatically, and the number of people who had glyphosate residues found in their urine had dramatically increased. It's in our soil, it's in our air, it's in our water, it's in our food, it's in our own bodies. It's the most widely used, as you said, agrochemical in the world. It's used not only with GMO crops, like some people think, but with an array of non-genetically engineered crops. And EPA estimates more than 70 different food crops.
I'm sure that many of our listeners are concerned about ingesting glyphosate. They don't want to if they can avoid it, and they believe that if they're consuming non-GMO food, they're protected, and that is a good step. But as you've been mentioning, it's not just on GMO food. Monsanto has been recommending to farmers that they spray Roundup on non-GMO crops like wheat and oats and barley, and a lot of other crops, as you've mentioned, just before they're harvested as a desiccant to make the harvest more consistent, to make it easier, and that's particularly true in wet and cool environments. Now, glyphosate is being used so much now as a desiccant on non-GMO crops like oats and wheat that the EPA recently increased allowable threshold levels in these crops. In the case of oats, the allowable threshold was increased to literally 300 times greater than the former limit. Now, Charles Benbrook, who's a visiting scholar at the Bloomberg School of Public Health, and who has spent more than a decade studying the use of glyphosate and its health risks, says that although pre-harvest desiccation may account for only a small percentage of overall glyphosate use, it accounts for over 50% of our dietary exposure. Monsanto claims that this use of glyphosate poses no health risk. Of course, that's what they would say. But many consumers don't find the idea of glyphosate in their food to be appetizing. So, Carey, how much does it concern you that we're finding residues of the weed killer in the finished food products, even non-GMO foods that people are eating?
Yeah, I mean, it's very concerning. As a parent, I have 3 children. I think we tend to worry about our children more than we worry about ourselves. The thought of, sitting them down for breakfast, lunch, or dinner and handing them, a plate of nutritious food, or food I think is nutritious, but that is laced with weed killer, is very disturbing, obviously. And this desiccation practice is something that Monsanto came up with. They have nice little glossy marketing brochures that they hand out to farmers and others. And, and it lays out, yes, you can use this on oats or wheat or barley or lentils, and it won't harm the crop and it won't be dangerous for people who consume it. But as you said, more and more people are doubting that. And I've been in conversations with some grain handlers and food companies that are certainly becoming aware of that concern and are starting to demand that farmers not do that. There are some very large grain handling companies that are saying, we're not going to take your grain if you continue to desiccate it with glyphosate. So they're aware of the problem as well. Again, this is, an issue where once we have the information and the education and, people are vocal about it, it can affect change. But this is just baby steps right now, certainly. But the desiccation issue is big, and you're right, and this is not on GMO crops at all. We're seeing glyphosate levels at higher levels in oat products than in corn products. And corn is sprayed, right over the top while it's being grown, GMO corn. So it's something that maybe many people weren't aware of, but it's something definitely to be worried about.
And I think it's a reason for people to, if they can afford it and get it, to buy organically grown food, because those foods have not been desiccated with glyphosate.
Right. Synthetic chemicals, synthetic pesticides are, not part of the organic program, generally not allowed in organic production. And organic farmers have to go through, quite a lot of hurdles, a number of steps to try to ensure that their products are, as pesticide-free as possible. Generally, if you want to be pesticide-free, organic is probably, your easiest and safest bet. I know a number of people are also trying to just, maybe they think organic's too expensive or they don't have access like they want, but they're searching out and sourcing sort of local farmers and trying to get to know their farmers. A number of farmers are trying to reduce their pesticide use and engage in more sustainable practices like cover cropping and more crop rotation. So there are things that are happening to try to move away from this. It's not only that these pesticides are dangerous for human health, but people are waking up and realizing that they're harmful to the environment. They're harmful to the soil. They're harmful to biodiversity. They're not sustainable. They're not going to continue to work for farmers like they have. So I do think that we are moving toward change in a good way. But, as I said before, I think we're still in the very early stages of that. And the pesticide companies, that's why you're seeing Monsanto and the others in the chemical industry really pushing back, hard on this, because this is billions of dollars in sales for them. This is what that represents, is money and profit.
There's a war going on over this, and thousands of plaintiffs are now suing Monsanto, alleging that the company's weed killer Roundup has caused them massive harm. They've gone through months of discovery. They've obtained millions of pages of internal Monsanto documents. They've looked at the research studies, and they believe they can win this case. But proving that a specific chemical causes a specific cancer is a difficult task, particularly when the company profiting from the sale of that chemical will do anything it can to confuse and to obstruct the process. Carey, what gives these plaintiffs and their attorneys optimism that they can prevail against the incredibly deep pockets and underhanded tactics of Monsanto?
That is such a good question. And you know what? I've asked them that many times. I guess I'm skeptical. I'm a cynic. Maybe as a journalist you always are, but I think it's a high hill to climb to take on the big corporations, to try to prove individuals and individual cancers and individual circumstances led to a specific disease. Right? I mean that's been hard in every scenario we've seen it. But they, as you said, are quite confident. I mean, they believe that they have the evidence to show not only that this Roundup, and they're not specific only to glyphosate, they're talking about the formulated Roundup product. And there have been studies that show that the full formulation of Roundup is more toxic than just glyphosate alone. Some of the additional ingredients, the surfactants, one in particular called POEA that Monsanto has moved to try to pull out of its Roundup now, are known to be particularly dangerous. And they believe that they have sufficient evidence to show not only that this causes non-Hodgkin lymphoma, but that Monsanto has known about it and actively covered it up. And these 10 million pages of internal Monsanto documents that have come out now through discovery, many of those do seem to support that. We see Monsanto saying internally, we can't say that Roundup is not carcinogenic. We haven't done the necessary testing to know about that. We can't say that. And we see them talk about trying to silence different scientists, even their own internal scientists who have raised questions and concerns, trying to tell them basically to shut up and go away, trying to ghostwrite papers, trying to pay scientists to put their names on things so that it looks independent. We're going back to the deceptive tactics here, but when you put it all together, the plaintiff's attorneys seem to think it makes a very compelling case, and that the first case should go to trial in the summer of 2018, in June of 2018.
Well, when you mentioned that in their internal documents, they're acknowledging that they really can't say that Roundup doesn't cause cancer, but they are telling us, they're telling the public that we should trust them, that more research is not needed, that the safety of glyphosate and Roundup is proven. In fact, some of their ads have actually described Roundup literally as safe to drink.
Safe enough to drink, right? Safe as table salt. They're safer than table salt.
Yeah, and there was one case where a British journalist had a spokesperson for the Monsanto viewpoint on and actually offered that person a glass of water that contained Roundup to drink to see if they would be true to what they're telling the public. And of course, that person immediately declined.
Right. Well, as would all of us, right? Probably.
Anybody with a brain, I think. You know, Monsanto continually rejects, publicly anyway, rejects the findings that is finding problems, health problems, public health problems, environmental problems with Roundup. Meanwhile, the iconic monarch butterfly, which typically winters in central Mexico or coastal California and then moves to summer breeding grounds in the northern U.S. and Canada, has been in steep decline in recent years. The monarch butterfly population has decreased enormously since in the last maybe 25 years, nearly 1 billion monarch butterflies have vanished. The overall population has dropped by a staggering 80% in just the last 20 years. And these are precisely the years during which Monsanto's Roundup Ready GMO crops have been widespread. Carey, is there a connection?
Well, there definitely is. Monsanto even acknowledges that there is a connection. The widespread use of glyphosate has decimated basically the forage for the monarch butterfly. And when you remove, what the butterfly feeds on and what it relies on to repopulate, of course you're going to see these dramatic declines. So, and as I said, Monsanto, the EPA, everybody sort of acknowledges this, and Monsanto's actually put together, I think it's $1 million or perhaps more, to try to restore, the milkweed plant population, to try to encourage people to plant milkweed and to do different things to strengthen the butterfly habitat, essentially. And there are all sorts of butterfly groups now and organizations trying to save the monarch butterfly. But it is, as you said, directly related to widespread sort of unchecked use of glyphosate, which has killed off the milkweed that the monarch relied on to survive. It's just one, I guess, canary in the coal mine, or one red flag for what we're doing to our environment. There are a host of sort of unseen ills, like what we're doing to the soil, the health of the microbial community in the soil, and the weed resistance and the insect resistance, and just all of the different things that spiral out of this unchecked use of this chemical.
And when you talk about damage to the microbial populations in the soil, we have microbial populations within our bodies, the microbiome. And many scientists now are seriously worried that consuming glyphosate residues in our food is interfering with our gut bacteria. And this could, in fact, be a causal factor or a contributing factor to the skyrocketing rates of gluten intolerance, autism, and many other serious pathologies, this according to many of these scientists. Now, the research on this type of thing doesn't seem to be as developed as the research tying the weed killer to kidney problems and to cancer. But I find it very worrisome. Does it concern you?
Yes, I mean, definitely. And as you said, the research isn't as extensive or as developed as what we've seen in some other areas pertaining to glyphosate, but it's developing, and it is incredibly worrisome, because if we are disturbing and interfering with that healthy, microbial community within the gut, within the human gut, we throw everything into disarray within our body, within human health. And that's what happens in the soil when we disrupt that. It affects the health of the plant, and that's what many scientists are saying happens in us. We disrupt the body's ability, to heal itself and to be healthy. And the plaintiffs' attorneys, have been paying attention to this as well, and many of them say they plan to introduce this in the litigation, that they have, good documentation on exactly what this is doing to the health of the gut as well. So all of this is, coming to light and coming to the forefront, and I think is going to play out, over the next couple of years, certainly. But it's the reason we need more scrutiny and more science and more research, authentic, independent science, not to have our science stifled, which is what the chemical industry is telling us. We see through internal documents when our National Toxicology Program and units of the CDC want to take a harder look at glyphosate, want to take a harder look at formulated Roundup. We see the chemical industry writing letters to them basically saying, how dare you? Don't you dare do that. If you want information, you get it from us. You don't look to independent science, for goodness sakes. And that's the war. It's the war between the independent science and the corporate science, and what we're going to support and who we're going to believe and who we're going to rely on.
Well, I know I feel a lot safer if government policies and regulations are reflective of the findings of independent scientists rather than those in Monsanto's or the other biotech companies employ. There's an old saying that I find to be very true. It's healthy soil, healthy food, healthy people. And it seems to me that the whole attempt to grow food with poisons and pesticides and herbicides like Roundup is an attack on the health of the soil, the microorganisms that make the soil fertile and rich and drought tolerant and able to provide the nutrients to the food crops that lead to healthy people. It seems to me that this whole agrochemical way of growing food is misguided in a way, and that right now the use of Roundup the amounts is unprecedented in world history. U.S. farmers alone apply maybe 300 million pounds of this poison every year to our soils, and the use of the chemical has now spawned what scientists and farmers are calling superweeds. And these are weeds that grow tall and fast and choke off important food crops, and that are becoming increasingly impervious to efforts to wipe them out. And these superweeds now cost U.S. farmers billions of dollars every year. Monsanto's answer is to tell the farmers to use even more concentrated forms of Roundup, as well as to use older and even more dangerous herbicides. Now, Carey, does Monsanto's answer seem at all reasonable to you, or will it just keep us stuck on the pesticide treadmill?
Well, it's a perfect example of the pesticide treadmill, right? I mean, the weed scientists started warning about weed resistance, in the early 2000s. Shortly after Monsanto introduced Roundup Ready crops, the weed scientists out there said, this is going to be disastrous. And they tried to warn the EPA, and they tried to encourage EPA to restrict glyphosate use in some way, so that we wouldn't have this widespread weed resistance develop. And EPA didn't listen and waved them off, and Monsanto waved them off. And it wasn't really until about 2011, 2012, maybe 2010, that the problem was just so undeniable that the industry and the EPA said, all right, you guys were right. We've got a huge problem, right? And so this is when the companies Monsanto and BASF and Dow started saying, all right, well, the solution is we just pour more pesticides on there. So we combine glyphosate. We don't stop using it. We combine it with 2,4-D. We combine it with dicamba, you're right, which are older and considered more dangerous, more detrimental to farming. And that's what they have started doing. And, of course, now we're caught up in a whole mess with dicamba, because it doesn't stay where you put it, and it moves, and it kills neighboring crops, and it's causing all sorts of havoc. Pouring more pesticides on the same types of crops over and over year after year is not something that's going to be sustainable at all in the long run. But it's where we are right now.
It is where we are right now, with industrial agriculture completely attached to the pesticide treadmill. As you said, Carey, it's not going to be sustainable at all in the long run. I don't think it's even sustainable in the short run. We've already passed many tipping points. The chemical inputs used in industrial agriculture are now stressing so many aspects of the ecosystem that we're seeing an ever-growing cascade of undesirable, unwanted changes that are already having seriously adverse impacts on human health and on the health of our world. In your steady, calm, and objective way, Carey, You're revealing some enraging facts. I feel angry at how deeply the regulatory agencies we expect to protect public health are in the pocket of agrochemical companies like Monsanto. My hope is that our emotional responses to what's happening, including our anger, might propel us out of our lethargy and our resignation. My hope is that our feelings about what's taking place will call us into action to protect ourselves, our families, public health, and the planet's life support systems. In this effort, I find you, Carey, to be a real leader. And I find it just remarkable that you were once in the inner circle with Monsanto's president, with the company's chief executives and scientists. You knew and know their viewpoints very well. At one point, you were a fan of GMOs, and now here you are, a journalist, calmly working to set the record straight and dispassionately exposing the truth about pesticides and the systemic cover-up of evidence of their dangers. What I want to ask you, Carey, is what do you see as your mission or your advocacy?
My mission or my advocacy is for truth and transparency, wherever that may lead. This pesticide, this synthetic chemical pesticide sort of treadmill, the dangers to human health, the dangers to the environment, I feel like we have only been getting one side of the story for so long. We're getting the reward side, the propaganda side, the messaging that these chemical industries want us to have. And the other side, the risk side, the danger side, the information we need to make balanced, informed choices and decisions and to make sound policies that are protective of public health, that information has been hidden. It's very, deliberately hidden. And so it's a journalist's job to find the truth, to find the facts that are important and relevant and to bring them to light. And that's what I'm doing. So it's still the job of a journalist. And then it's up to other people to decide what that means to them and for their lives and for their choices and for policy decisions that they want to pursue. I'm not a policymaker. I'm not an activist. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm a journalist. And I'm finding the truth and I'm bringing it to light.
Well, and we thank you for that. And your commitment to truth and transparency reminds me of something that Rachel Carson actually wrote in Silent Spring. She said that if we're going to live intimately with these chemicals, eating and drinking them, taking them into the very marrow of our bones, we had better know something about their nature and their power. It seems to me that as a journalist, you are enlightening us about their nature and their power and about the systematic efforts of the companies profiting from selling these poisons to obfuscate the conversation and keep us from the truth and transparency to which you're dedicated.
Exactly. And when you think about it too hard, it just makes you mad. It's outrageous. It's outrageous to be lied to. It's outrageous to have the risks hidden. Certainly, companies have every right to trumpet their products and to try to do their best to sell their chemicals and their seeds and whatever it is that they're selling. But I don't think that they have the right to hide the risks from us and to manipulate the science and to deceive us. I had a good friend who died from cancer in December. I have a friend down the street who is in remission from cancer. A woman across the street, her brother-in-law has brain cancer. It's all around us. And our federal agencies acknowledge pesticides are a contributing factor to cancer and disease. This affects all of us, and we all need to care.
We all do need to care, and some of us are angry. When you see the level of deceit, it's hard not to be angry. When you see our agencies, regulatory agencies, who are there to protect us, deferring to these corporations with their profit motive instead of taking care of public health, it is enraging. It's not a pretty story you tell. I mean, it's a story of deceit and poison and corruption and cancer and death. But it is a critically important story if we're going to protect ourselves and if we're going to protect future generations. Carey, if we ever come to our senses and start to grow our food in a healthy way, in a sustainable way, it will be thanks to truth tellers like you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really mean it. I really mean it. On behalf of Ocean and myself, and of everyone involved in the food revolution, I want to thank you for your outstanding work and, of course, for being with us today.
You're very kind. Thank you for having me.
We've been talking with veteran journalist Carey Gillam, author of Whitewash, the story of a weed killer, cancer, and the corruption of science. Carey, in a world in which the conversation about food and agriculture is so often controversial and so often clouded by misinformation and propaganda, yours is a voice of clarity, balance, and wisdom. We're so grateful for your research into some of the most critical issues of our times and for your partnership in the food revolution.
It's been great to talk with you both. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Carey Gillam and to my dad and colleague, John Robbins, for that incredibly powerful conversation. To express your opinions on what you've been hearing and to find out what other people are saying, post and engage in the comments section on our broadcast page. Make sure to refresh those comments so you can see the most recent ones that have been submitted. Our next presentation will be an interview with Vani, one of the brilliant lights in the food movement. It will start at the top of the hour in about 11 minutes. We are now going to try resetting some things to fix the audio issues you may have been experiencing, so you might experience now a moment of pause in the broadcast. If it lasts more than 20 seconds, please refresh your browser. And now I'm going to respond to some of the comments that have come in so far and offer some reflections. We just heard from P.N. Sloan, who said, "Thank you for another day of insightful presentations. Later today, I'm going to check the mutual funds I have, and if Monsanto is in any of them, they will be sold. It's another way we can fight back." Thank you, P.N. Sloan. Yes, it is another way we can fight back. We can hold these companies accountable for their practices, and we don't have to give them our hard-earned money. Shannon Harris said, "I'm so thankful for the intelligent people that are fighting for our health and food safety. I have known for a long time how dangerous chemicals in our foods are, but had no voice to make a difference. I am so hopeful that our speakers today will be the saviors of our world, kids, animals, etc. I am enjoying this summit beyond words. Thank you again." Thank you, Shannon. And really, this at one level, this summit is about the speakers and the brilliant interviewer that my dad is, and all the wisdom that we're gaining. But at another level, it really is about you. It's about every single one of the more than 310,000 people who are participating. And it's about what we put into action. It's about how we live this message. And it's about the world that we are going to change together. Donna Hoffman said, "This is terrifying and encouraging at the same time. We are doing everything we can to support organic, non-GMO, and humanely raised food production by voting with our dollars and talking about this with friends and family, as well as posting information on Facebook. Love the work you are doing to affect change and inform. Thank you." Thank you, Donna. Yes, every time we speak out, we help to shift the course of history. We heard from Diane Johnson, who said, "Fantastic but frightening information. Thank you for bringing this information in such an accessible way. I look forward to learning more. I just ordered Ms. Gillam's book. Thanks to all of you who are helping us live the healthiest, happiest, longest lives possible." Well, thank you, Diane, for getting informed and putting this into action. We love having your partnership in this food revolution. Now we heard from Nikki, who said, "I am a family doctor in New York City. I really appreciate you getting this perspective out in a way that people can hear. I run the homeless services for my organization, and I see patients at soup kitchens and shelters, and there is no access to knowledge or affordable, healthy, plant-based foods to feed people raised in poor or working-class communities. I will keep fighting the fight." Well, thank you for raising this, Nikki. I think it is a critically important issue. The people in our society who suffer from the most obesity, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, heart disease, and other diet-fueled diseases are actually the poorest segments of society. We have in the world right now more than 800 million people who are dying of starvation, and we have over 1 billion people who are overweight or obese. And if you look at the demographics, it tends to a certain extent to follow class lines because we have a food system that has made the cheapest and the most addictive calories be the same, and they are the junk foods. So when we choose real healthy whole foods, we are helping to shift the supply chain. We are helping to increase the demand for healthy foods, which helps to bring down the price in the long run. But we also need to shift policies. Right now we have government subsidies in the US and many other countries that essentially subsidize commodities crops that make it cheaper to the consumer to get things like high fructose corn syrup, factory farmed animal products, and junk foods, while effectively penalizing vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, the very foods we should be eating more of. I'm talking about tens of billions of dollars every single year. So one of the places we can focus is on shifting those policies, lobbying and organizing to shift the subsidies so that we stop essentially fining humanity for people who are wearing their seatbelts, making it more expensive to do the right thing. And I honor you, Nikki, for helping bring consciousness and health to communities that really need it. I actually believe that food is one of the most critical social justice issues of our times. For those of us who want to see a healthy and a safe world for everybody, who believe that every child deserves health and vitality regardless of how much money they have or the color of their skin, I think that the opportunity is crying out for each of us to take action to spread the word, to help support, for example, local programs that support the poor, to provide healthier foods in those programs and in our communities, to lobby for change to help schools offer healthier food in school lunches. We have about 30 million kids in the United States that literally depend on the school meal program for their nutritional survival. If we can help up-level the quality of the food they're given, that makes a difference. Think about what it means to have healthy brain function. Think about the economic opportunities that become available when people are more clear, when they're more potent, when they have more energy. We can uplift the health and well-being of our society and create more fairness and more opportunity for everybody. We heard from Christine Ridakafia, who said, "Thank you for putting together this training material. I work in the food and beverage industry, and I will do my best to share these views with staff, suppliers, and customers alike. I work with companies that are open to a change, and I slowly implement better for the world, for us, and for the animals, food choices that help everyone. It's very tough to change an industry, but I have to say in the past 3 years, there is a shift. I drove revamping and opening the first North American plant-based restaurant on the mountain at Whistler Blackcomb in Whistler, BC. This information and the work you do powers and fuels my passion to make a change. So thank you for providing tools, and many of us will ripple them into days and years after this summit." Well, thank you so much, Christine, for spreading the word. You know, every one of us has a community we live in, has work that we do, has a web of relationships we're engaged in, and every one of us can apply what we're learning and help mobilize to implement positive changes within those communities. So whether it's just your own family, just your own choices, or whether you work in an environment where you can spread the word and help create institutional change, we all have a part to play in this food revolution. So thank you for playing it. We heard from Karen Nacella, who said, "This is my 3rd year listening to the Food Revolution Summit. Thank you, Ocean and John. I have brought in several other listeners this year. It can be such an uphill battle. How can we get more of this information to the mainstream, to schools? How can we stop the factory farms? What can we do?" Well, Karen, thank you for caring. Thank you for asking. And thank you for listening to what you can do. You know, you participate in the food revolution every time you choose real food over processed junk. Every time you support real farmers who are growing food free from pesticides and hormones and antibiotics and GMOs. Every time you choose food at a restaurant that's in alignment with your values, you actually inspire them to offer more food like it. Because every dollar we spend is a vote. And I want to say that we are participating right now in a time of dramatic change. And there's actually some really good news. Sales of organic food in the United States have increased 26-fold in the last generation. In just the last decade, we have seen a 3-fold increase in farmers' markets. 9 U.S. states have joined the entire European Union in banning gestational crates for mother pigs. Sales of certified non-GMO foods in the U.S. have gone from nothing to over $10 billion in sales in the last 5 years. Sales of what are considered natural foods have grown to over $100 billion. And younger consumers are actually at the forefront of many of these changes, which gives us more and more hope for the future. All over the world, farmers, producers, retailers, consumers are stepping up. We all have the opportunity to participate in a massive shift in how we grow, process, eat, and think about food, and to reap some very real benefits. We heard from Melissa Swatek, who said, "I never even thought about the fact that organic labeling didn't go hand in hand with humane treatment. It didn't occur to me. I used to buy cage-free eggs, but I'm sure even that isn't saying much about the treatment of the chickens." We've been watching Rotten on Netflix, and it's making some strong connections about what's being said here. I've been struggling lately to stick to a plant-based diet, but these interviews and all this information coming to light for me is really building my motivation and foundation for decisions regarding what I'm buying and eating. Yes, Melissa, it's true. Thank you for participating and applying what you're learning. We're so grateful to have you here. A number of our participants have asked for a little more information about which foods contain GMOs and how to avoid them. So let me say quickly, my best advice is very simple. You want to, number 1, go organic. Number 2, if that isn't available or affordable, go certified non-GMO. Number 3, avoid corn, soy, canola, and sugar if they aren't either organic or non-GMO. And number 4, avoid processed foods, which is probably a good idea anyways. We now want to give an empowerment package to Linda Weiner, who said, "Love this phenomenal presentation by the most passionate speakers about everyone needs to know. I am a registered nurse. I will be sharing this information." Well, Linda, now you'll have a little tool to help you share this information. You own the summit for life. Our team will follow up with you. And now it's time to move to the next segment of our broadcast, which is an interview with Vani Hari. Welcome to the Food Revolution Summit, where we explore how you can heal your body and your world with food. This is Ocean Robbins, and I am joined by my dad and colleague, John Robbins, in welcoming our guest, Vani Hari. Vani Hari is a revolutionary food activist and New York Times bestselling author. She started foodbabe.com in April 2011 and quickly became a worldwide sensation, with Time magazine naming her one of the most influential people on the internet. Vani's highly publicized investigations and campaigns have influenced how major food giants like Kraft, Subway, Chipotle, Chick-fil-A, and Starbucks create their products and have steered them towards more healthful policies. Vani is helping food companies become more accountable to consumer demand, and she's helping millions of people to make wise choices for themselves and for their families. So now, Vani, my dad and I are so inspired by the difference that you're making, and we're so grateful we get this time with you. For this interview, I'm now going to hand it over to my dad, John Robbins.
Well, thank you, Ocean, and thank you, Vani, for being with us today.
I am so excited to be here with you both. I think you guys are legendary in my mind in terms of mentors of mine, and have been part of the food industry, have made so many strides and changes, and it's such a pleasure to be here talking with you both.
Well, it's a pleasure for us too, and I know our listeners will get a lot out of this interview and hearing from you. Where I want to start is many people believe today that the chemical additives in our foods have been tested by objective researchers. And I think people have a right to expect that, but it's not always the case. In fact, a recent study that was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association found that since 1997, it is more than 20 years ago, every single one of the members on the panels that have been convened by governmental agencies to determine if a food additive was safe had financial ties to the industry that created the chemical additives. And some were employees of these companies, some were consultants, all were paid by the industries whose products they were then asked to assess for safety. Vani, how then is a consumer to know whether the additives are actually safe to eat and whether the food products they buy won't harm them?
That is a really good question. We have a government and environment that basically makes us believe that our food is being tested by some independent third-party source. And, given the results of the study that you just mentioned, you can see that the majority of our food that has been deemed safe in terms of additives that have been invented in the last 50 years or so have been approved by the food industry themselves, either people that have been hired by the food industry or people working for the food industry, people looking to benefit and profit off the food industry and the foods that they sell to the public. Unfortunately, we're in a situation now where we've created a society where we're very dependent upon this food system. But there is an opportunity to learn the truth, and there is an opportunity to get out of the victimhood and to become a warrior in this food system by really taking back control of what you're eating.
When you talk about getting out of victimhood and taking back control of what you're eating, that's really important. We all want to be empowered. We want to be free. We don't want to be victims. I'm thinking how most people assume when they see the word natural on a food product that means something. And usually they assume that that means that the product only contains ingredients that are safe and healthy and wholesome. And I've noticed, as I'm sure you have and many of our listeners have, that these products tend to come in wholesome-looking, earth-friendly-looking packages. And the word natural is often very prominently displayed. But, Vani, does the word natural on a food product actually mean that the ingredients inside the packages are wholesome and healthy?
No, unfortunately not. The natural quote-unquote industry is a $40 billion industry. And the food companies have used the word natural to describe their products for a very long time. And unfortunately, the FDA does not have a definition that they agree upon that is standardized that food companies must follow when it comes to the word natural. So right now, you can use the word natural and get away with using a lot of different ingredients that are not found in nature, that are synthesized in a laboratory, that are grown with genetically engineered material, created flavors, if you will, that really are not found in nature. They take, for example, the 1 millionth best part of any taste that you can possibly taste and create a laboratory chemical, and then they put it in food and make food that you wouldn't normally eat, make you want to eat it. So basically, there's things like, I was just looking at a package of Go-Gurt, this Yoplait yogurt that is marketed towards children, and it's raspberry and strawberry and banana flavored. But strawberry, banana, and raspberry are written very big on the label, and then very tiny, tiny little print, it says flavored. And when you look at the back of the package and you look at the ingredients, there's no raspberries in there. There's no strawberries or banana. There's no fruit in it. And they're using these synthesized flavors that they've created in the laboratory to mimic what we should be getting from real fruits and vegetables.
A few years ago, the TV show 60 Minutes ran a special report on the now multi-billion-dollar flavor industry. These are the companies whose scientists create flavorings, so-called natural flavorings and artificial flavorings that make your mouth water and keep you coming back for more, as you were describing. In that show, the 60 Minutes correspondent, Morley Safer, said, quote, "The flavoring industry is the enabler of the food processing business, which depends on it to create a craving for everything from soda pop to chicken soup. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's an industry cloaked in secrecy." And Morley Safer then asked the largest flavoring company in the world, if they were trying to create addictive tastes. He pointedly used the word addictive. The reply from the flavoring company was, "That's a good word." Vani, there's a lot of secrecy involved in the creations of so-called natural flavors. The formulas are considered proprietary and are highly protected. What have you been able to learn about them?
Well, what I've learned is some of the same scientists that made tobacco addictive with nicotine, some of the same scientists that learned about how the brain reacts when we consume different substances, they're using that same science with food products. And that is a huge problem considering the obesity, heart disease, diabetes epidemic that we're facing in this country. We are a very sick nation. And if we are going to allow our food manufacturers to literally hijack our taste buds so that we cannot have any self-control because they're using, the highest levels of science to trick us. And if we don't understand that that's happening and choose to say, you know what, I'm not going to get hijacked by the food industry, I'm not going to let my taste buds be controlled by them, then we're really going to be in a losing game. We're going to be in a situation where we're going to feel like we're out of control, that we won't be able to control our appetites, that we'll not be able to stop at one chip or one bunny or whatever. And I say one bunny is because I eat these chocolate bunnies and they have natural flavoring added to them. And I swear, every time I eat them, even though they're organic, every time I eat them, I can't stop at eating just a few. I have to eat like half the box. I literally can't stop at just a couple. It's because they've really knocked it, like dialed in that flavor so brilliantly that I just can't stop.
And they do it on purpose. That's their goal, to make it so we can't stop. And if someone as informed as you are about the dangers of these chemicals is still has these weaknesses, and I do too, I'm sure most of our listeners can relate. I think, well, what's happening to the people who aren't informed, who are at the mercy, really, who don't have the time and the energy or even the access to the information that they would need to make really sophisticated choices?
That's a really good question. And that's why I think it's absolutely important as a food activist and as someone who's listening to this to educate those around us, because really that's how we reach everybody that isn't paying attention or may not know that this is happening. So as you're listening to this program, as you're learning information, share this program with your friends and your family and share what you've learned, because that's how we reach everyone. And so that people start to make better choices at the grocery store and that these products start to literally lose profits. And so these food manufacturers will have to start to change and start to bring us cleaner labeled products so that we're looking at products that aren't creating these situations. Now, the thing is I'm not saying that we're going to live in a utopia world one day that the food manufacturers are suddenly going to say, you know what, we're not going to create anything addictive. I know that probably won't happen, but what can happen is the awareness and education, the way we can wake up as a society and learn about what's happening so we know we can make better choices.
That is happening, and it's thanks to your work and thanks to the work of really many of our listeners who are participants in the food revolution by making healthier choices, wiser choices, and sharing that information with the people they interact with. And there's a shift going on. 5 years ago, the International Food Information Council polled consumers, and they then found that 9% of consumers named chemicals as their top food safety concern. Then they did it again last year and found that 38% of consumers were now naming chemicals as their top food safety concern. So this is a tremendous increase in people's concern about the chemicals that are being put into their foods. And as a result of your work and of these changes, we're seeing the ingredient lists on food packages beginning to shrink in some cases with fewer spooky sounding chemical names. And some of the biggest names in packaged foods, I'm thinking about Kraft and Heinz and Campbell Soup and Nestle and Hershey's. They're lining up to jettison, in some cases, artificial colors and flavors and preservatives, and to put products on the store shelves with shorter lists of ingredients. I do wonder, though, sometimes is this the unprocessing of processed food, or is this more about optics than it is about health, more about holding on to market share than about the genuine pursuit of healthier and safer food?
It's a good question. There's definitely benefits to removing a lot of these controversial chemicals because unfortunately, a lot of them are related to different ailments. Like, for example, artificial food dyes are linked to hyperactivity in children. So obviously, we don't want our children eating an abundance of artificial food dyes or any at all, really. I'm going to do my best to try to keep it away from my daughter. She's 14 months old, and so far she's eaten pretty much 100% organic diet since she was born, but including my breast milk. But in terms of trying to eliminate some of these chemicals, it makes sense. Now, does that make Kraft mac and cheese healthy to eat all the time? No, it doesn't. It does remove the risk of hyperactivity in children when they removed artificial food dyes from Kraft mac and cheese. The same goes with Frito-Lay coming out with organic Doritos. Are organic Doritos better for you than regular Doritos? I'd say yes, because there's a good chance they have less glyphosate, which is the chemical found in Roundup that's sprayed on non-organic and GMO crops. But are those organic Doritos probably addictive and still have a lot of calories and a lot of empty calories? Yes, they do. The unprocessing of some of these processed foods is helpful to a certain degree, and I'm glad that the food industry has made waves and has basically adopted what they already knew, which was the European standard. They were already making a lot of this food for Europeans, less additives and less chemicals, and so now they've given us that ability to, before I thought it was very unethical that food manufacturers would literally serve other people in other countries safer and better food than their own American citizens. But now we're at a turning point. We're going to really need to dial in to the nutrition education of America and get Americans to understand that in order to be healthy, you have to take control of your food. You have to learn how to cook. You have to start to handle your food and learn to prepare it and start to visit farmers markets and learn about different fruits and vegetables and why you need to eat them and start focusing in on getting more plants in our diet.
Getting more plants in our diet is really important, and so is getting the chemicals and the pesticides out of it. And you have a 14-month-old daughter now, and are you breastfeeding?
Yes, I still am.
That's wonderful. And you, of course, want to keep any chemicals or pesticides out of your breast milk. I'm thinking about a recent study from the European Parliament. It was a report written by scientists at universities across Europe, and it reviewed the existing science on organic food and agriculture. Now, we've known that organic food is more environmentally sustainable and that it contains far fewer pesticide residues. But what I found most striking in this report, and I'm thinking about it in terms of your breast milk, is the compelling evidence they found that organic food can help protect children from the brain-altering effects of some neurotoxic pesticides. And one of the study's authors said that the immediate benefit of organic food is to avoid pesticide exposure that can damage early life brain development. It seems to me, Vani, and I'm wondering if you would agree with me on this, that a mother who is breastfeeding or a mother who's feeding small children in any way, that would be at a particularly important time to, if you possibly can afford it, to get organic food.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I hear from my readership across the globe, a lot of times either someone has been through a health issue that's woken them up or they've become a mother. And suddenly they're concerned about what they're putting in their children's bodies. And they're really paying attention. And that's really an amazing opportunity to educate moms and to let them know that this is the most critical time period in terms of child brain development and also in the womb and even before you have the baby. The fact that they're finding glyphosate in breast milk, Roundup is in our breast milk. It's just so incredibly terrifying. And so we have an opportunity as mothers to hopefully buy organic food, at least buy whole, real, unprocessed foods. Every single day, we're eating the same things as a family, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, she grabs broccoli off my plate. She picks kale out of her pasta and leaves the organic pasta behind. And, she's a testament to what can happen when you start with real, whole, and unprocessed foods. You don't have to automatically go to all of the packaged processed toddler snacks and all those type of things that they have in the grocery store shelves for people to buy. I mean, you really just can start with whole, real foods and just cook them very simply and steam them and grill them, put them in the oven. I mean, it's very, very simple, and kids love it.
Kids do, unless their taste buds have been hijacked by the artificial flavors and even the natural flavors. You've called natural flavors in one of your posts a form of chemical warfare. Can you explain?
Well, the problem is if you go into a grocery store and you pick up a package, there's 9 times out of 10 is going to have natural flavor in it. And I don't want the foods that I'm eating on a daily basis being synthesized in a laboratory for it to taste a certain way. I want my body to naturally eat things that are made for it to eat, and so that my brain chemistry knows when to stop and to start and to feel great and to live the most vibrant, healthy life it can. So it really bothers me that everything's manufactured to taste a certain way or to create some addictive flavor that makes me eat more than I should or makes me continue to buy a product when I really shouldn't. It doesn't really have the nutritional qualities that I'm looking for. So it is like chemical warfare because it's in everything, and it's just something that I personally really don't want to take part in.
What you're saying reminds me of something that Dr. David Kessler said. He's the former head of the FDA. And he says that we're living in a food carnival. That's his phrase, food carnival. By that, he's referring to the flavoring chemicals that are added to our food, whether they're called natural or not, and the fact that they're so stimulating that they hijack our brain. And he calls the companies that create these flavors the hired guns of the food industry. And he says that they seduce people into eating too much salt, too much fat, too much sugar, and they're responsible, at least in part, for the obesity in our country. Now, a lot of people think you shouldn't blame food companies or flavor chemists or anyone else for people's inability to stop eating and from getting obese. But when companies practice this kind of trickery over our taste buds, over our brain chemistry, I think it puts all of us at a disadvantage. I mean, how much should you have to research and know about your food in order to trust it? And I don't think it's at all reasonable to expect people in all income levels to have the time to find and understand this kind of knowledge. And that's one of the reasons that I appreciate your work so much, Vani.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Yeah, one of the beautiful things about the Food Babe Army, the people out there that, I call my readership the Food Babe Army because they're people that not only care about what they're eating, they care enough to sign petitions, go out and call companies, meet me at the company's headquarters and knock on their doors to get these changes so that the people who aren't paying attention benefit. The families that are eating artificial food dyes and on ADHD medication and all of this nonsense, they suddenly get help because there's less artificial food dyes in our food system as a result of these campaigns, as just one example.
It's a great example, and there are so many that your work is helping. And the Food Babe Army and the Food Revolution members are really working together and helping, as a result, the people who don't have the sophistication, don't have the knowledge, don't have even the access necessarily to that information or knowledge. But by helping get some of these dangerous chemicals out of the food supply, you're helping a lot of people that don't even know about you, have never heard of the Food Babe or the Food Babe Army, although you're becoming increasingly well known.
One of the things that's happened is that the food industry has been reinventing themselves faster than ever because they realize that we're getting smarter. and that we're paying attention to ingredients. As you mentioned, over 30% of us are now looking at ingredients and chemicals in food, and that's a concern of ours. And they really are put on notice, and they're losing revenue to a lot of these newer organic startups that are creating food from real food and providing better nutrition for us. They are very nervous. And so they've deployed different tactics to try to prevent this movement. Like, for example, they attack messengers like you and I. They go and hire front groups to spread misinformation about people who are trying to get this message out. They pay scientists and pay universities to conduct studies that benefit them in one way or another, or to defend their use of these chemicals and unethical practices. But what's happened is the food industry has really lost our trust. They fight transparency. And this is a big issue of mine that I think is really important to talk about. When a food company or chain or restaurant or anyone will not give you the information about what you're eating, you shouldn't be eating it. That is kind of my rule. When you ask for the ingredient list of a certain product, or you ask to know what's in something, and if the company won't give you that information, there's a good chance that food product or whatever it is full of chemical additives, is raised conventionally, has synthetic pesticides, GMOs, all of the things that we want to avoid. And, one of my biggest campaigns that I led was actually to get Starbucks to finally post the ingredient list for their main products, and all the, fancy frappuccinos, the pumpkin spice lattes, all of the things that they sell on a daily basis. I mean, they were full of chemical additives, the same chemical additives you'll find in soda, like caramel coloring level 4, that is considered a carcinogen. The stuff isn't caramel that you make on the stove with sugar and butter. It's stuff that's made with ammonia and is linked to cancer in rats. This was being used in all of these different Starbucks products, and nobody knew because they wouldn't be transparent about their ingredients. And so there's a new wave of transparency that is, I hope, on the future. And people are finally seeing that consumers want radical truth. They want radical transparency about the things that they eat.
And they should have it. I think the effort by the food companies to avoid having to disclose their ingredients to the public should be criminal. I don't know that if it actually breaks any laws, although sometimes it does. And we've seen that with GMOs. The food manufacturers, through the Grocery Manufacturers Association, have fought GMO labeling tooth and nail. And the FDA has ruled that GMOs are exempt from testing and put them in the category of generally recognized as safe, even though the FDA's own experts concluded that genetically engineered foods pose abnormal risks and need to be tested. And even though a significant number of experts outside the agency have repeatedly declared that safety testing is needed, and even though the only shred of evidence of safety has been generated by Monsanto and the other companies who have brought GMOs to market.
The problem that I have with the way the genetically engineered foods have been created is they've been completely coupled and produced and created to sell more chemical pesticides. And the chemical pesticides that they've primarily been used to sell is Roundup, the main weed killer that Monsanto sells. And one of the chief ingredients in that Roundup is called glyphosate. And the International Agency for Research on Cancer has deemed it as a probable carcinogen. And when they were coming out with this finding, everybody at Monsanto was scrambling to try to prevent this finding from coming out. They had a heads up. They got the EPA involved. They had an inside man there. I mean, so much corruption happening behind the scenes to prevent us from knowing the truth about this chemical. We know that the chemical pesticides that are sprayed on GMO crops are very risky and very controversial and are probable carcinogens. And knowing that, I don't want to consume GMO foods. But you need to go a step further, because the problem is that Roundup is also sprayed on lots of conventional crops, including a lot of conventional crops that we eat a lot of, like wheat and oats and rice. That's why I think it's absolutely important to choose USDA certified organic foods. Not only are you avoiding GMOs, but you're avoiding synthetic pesticides, a lot of the pesticides like Roundup, but also other ones that are linked to lymphoma and leukemia and other diseases. You are avoiding ingredients that have been processed with chemicals like hexane. You're avoiding sewage sludge and human waste. That's much different than conventional and non-GMO. So that's something that is very important to me. And that's why, I choose organic over any other label.
Over non-GMO certified, which is a step in the right direction. But with wheat, for example, as you referenced a moment ago, glyphosate, Roundup, is often used as a desiccant, even on non-GMO certified wheat, unless it's organic. And this is another reason, to my eyes, to favor organic foods if you can possibly afford them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think that the EPA protects us. You and I have been talking here about how often it doesn't. I want our listeners to know that it was in 1976 that Congress passed the Toxic Substances Control Act. And that's the act which gave the EPA the full power to control chemicals that pose a health risk to humans and the environment. But since then, the EPA's, which its task has been to monitor the nearly 100,000 chemicals that are produced in or imported into the United States. But since that time, since the Congress passed the Toxic Substances Control Act, of the 100,000 or so chemicals, the EPA has banned or limited the production of or the use of exactly 5. And it has not actually regulated a single chemical in the United States since the mid-1980s. Now, talk about being asleep at the switch. The EPA's central stance on regulation has been that the chemicals are safe until proven otherwise. This is not the precautionary principle. This is something opposite that. And Vani, you have often pointed out that multinational food companies use chemicals in their U.S. foods and are allowed to do so that they don't use in other countries, in particular Europe. And a moment ago, or earlier in this interview, you spoke of how that may be decreasing, that they're starting to provide healthier ingredients in their U.S. products. But what I want to ask you, how common is it now for the large food companies to create safer versions of their products for other countries, but put artificial ingredients in the formulations they sell in the U.S.?
Well, right now, there's a lot of change happening. And so a lot of these companies are reformulating their products. Like, for example, General Mills has decided to finally remove BHT from different cereals, but not all of them. So BHT is a packaging chemical that they add to cereal packages to preserve cereal and have a longer shelf life. And in Europe, they actually banned this ingredient. So in European cereals, you won't find BHT, but you'll find it here. And it's actually an endocrine disruptor. But then you'll have examples like PepsiCo, who uses natural colors like black carrot juice concentrate and beta carotene and Gatorade in other countries, but we're still using artificial food dyes, derived from petroleum here in the US. Doritos here in the United States are covered in yellow 6, yellow 5, and red 40, the traditional Doritos that you see at every grocery store. But in Europe, they're covered with just paprika extract and annatto and a non-ammonia-based caramel color class 1 that's actually safer. These food companies are still creating 2 versions of the same product for 2 different types of people. The European standards that use the precautionary principle that you have to prove something safe before you can use it, versus here where you can use anything under the sun. You can test it yourself and provide the approval yourself as a food company, and the FDA will approve it. I mean, there's this assumption that the FDA approves everything that we consume, and that's just not true. The FDA doesn't have the necessary measures in place to even look at the majority of food chemicals. There's over 10,000 food chemicals that are approved for use that have never even been reviewed by the FDA. We don't even understand the long-term effects of a lot of these food chemicals. And really, the only reason that the majority of these food chemicals have been invented is just to improve the bottom line of the food industry. The food industry would rather buy petroleum-based ingredients, synthetic ingredients, and put it in their food than to buy real food, because real food is more expensive. So it's just to improve their bottom line, and it's not to improve our health, and we have to recognize that.
Often it is not only not there to improve our health, but it actually harms our health. And that's why many of our listeners are reading the ingredients lists carefully, scrutinizing them, trying to see what's in them. But there's one ingredient that I want to ask you about, Vani. Many food manufacturers today, even including some makers of commercial organic foods, are adding carrageenan. They're adding it to foods like almond milk, coconut milk, soy milk, yogurt. And carrageenan is added to give the foods a thicker consistency and to make low-fat versions taste fuller. Now, carrageenan is also added to keep the ingredients from separating, and you'll find it in many nutritional shakes and milk products and non-dairy beverages. It has no nutritional value. No one is ever saying it has. And it really could be eliminated if companies simply printed shake well on their packages. It's derived, they say, from a natural source, but carrageenan appears, from the studies I've seen, to be destructive to the digestive system. It triggers an immune response similar to that your body has when it's invaded by pathogens like salmonella. In fact, carrageenan predictably causes inflammation, which can lead to ulcerations and bleeding and even contribute to the development of Alzheimer's disease. Carrageenan is still approved by the FDA as an additive, and it remains today widely used in many food products in the U.S., including infant formula. However, the European Union has banned it for use. How important, Vani, do you see it that we be on the lookout for carrageenan and not buy or eat products that contain it?
Well, thankfully, recently, the National Organic Standards Boards voted to limit its use in organic food. So I think organic foods have a few years to get it out of their products. So that's good news. But the problem is it's still in a lot of non-organic products. The thing that really comes to mind when it comes to a lot of these additives like carrageenan is we have a society where we're not feeling our best. We're feeling bloated. We're feeling sick. A lot of us have different ailments like IBS and other things that we're being medicated for pharmaceutically. We're getting a Band-Aid put on those symptoms by a pharmaceutical, when really what we could be doing is paying attention to these different additives that we're eating and start to eliminate them from our diet. And suddenly we might start to feel better. Every time that I do a campaign on a specific additive or an ingredient and knowing that it is linked to some health issue or a problem, and knowing that there's some pharmaceutical drug out there, some magic pill that tries to make these people feel better, it really makes me sad, because I know there's such an easier solution and a solution that fixes the problem when you start to eliminate these additives from your food.
I love what you're saying. And there is something rather bizarre about a system which sickens people due to the chemical additives in their foods, and then deals with that sickness by giving them more chemicals in the form of pharmaceutical drugs into their system. I mean, at what point do we detoxify? Do we get all this stuff out of our diets, out of our bodies, out of our minds, out of our brains, out of our lives, and start to live in a way that we have evolved metabolically to be healthy?
Yeah, I mean, that's really what the solution is to go back to a real food, unprocessed diet. And whether you can afford organics or not, getting back to real, whole, plant-based foods and making that in the majority of what you eat, the things that you can get at the farmer's market, you will start to feel less hijacked by the food industry. Your taste buds will start to normalize, and your appetite will start to be controlled. And then everything in terms of biochemically in your body will start to function at its highest level. And that's what happened to me. I was very sick as a child. I was very sick as a young adult. And it was because of the food that I was eating. And when I cleaned up my diet, not only did I get out so many prescription drugs, where to the point where I'm taking 0 today, I feel like I have more energy and more brain power and more vibrancy than I ever did earlier in my life 20 years ago.
Well, your example and your advocacy are helping millions of people. If it weren't for you and others like you, Vani, a lot of us would still be unaware of the chemicals that are added to our food, and we'd still be eating silly putty in our French fries and yoga mat softeners in our bread. The industrial food machine isn't going to tell us that they're putting chemicals in our food that have been banned in every other country but ours. But you have been telling us that, and I want to thank you for that, and I want to thank you for so much. I mean, we're living in a world where food companies have very few qualms about profiting from selling us products that are harmful to our health. And we desperately need people who will stand up to them and lead them, however willing they are, lead them by the nose if necessary to make their profits selling more healthy products. I've watched your career as a food activist blossom in the last few years, Vani, and I've been thrilled to see you emerge as one of our leaders. On behalf of Ocean and myself and everyone involved in the food revolution, I thank you for your extraordinary work that you're continuing to do, and I know will continue to do in the future. And of course, I thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for everything.
We've been talking with Vani Hari, founder of foodbabe.com, author of The Food Babe Way, and one of the most influential consumer educators and advocates of our times. Vani, you are a clear, committed, and compelling voice of sanity. We thank you for your bold work, for your visionary leadership, and for your partnership in the food revolution.
Thank you, Ocean.
Thank you so much to Vani Hari and to my dad and colleague, John Robbins, for that powerful conversation, to express your opinions on what you've been hearing, and to find out what other people are saying. Post and engage in the comments section on the broadcast page. Make sure to refresh the comments so you can see the most recent ones that have been submitted. And now I'm going to share and respond to some of the questions and comments that have been coming in. Myrna Chant said, my family farm is part of the Blue Diamond Almond Cooperative of small family farms who work together to bring a good product to market. At a recent meeting of growers and administration, I raised the question of if the Blue Diamond Almond Cooperative had considered going organic. Apparently, it is something that is being watched and discussed. I would encourage anyone listening to write to our wonderful cooperative in Sacramento, California, and kindly encourage the Blue Diamond Almond Grower Cooperative that you love small family farms and family farmers and you want to support their consideration to transition to organic farming. At the least, clear out any glyphosate that they/we might be using. Thank you for your kind voice in this. I am a farmer wanting to encourage change. Thank you so much, Myrna. If anyone wants to join in this effort, go to bluediamondgrowers.com. Again, that's bluediamondgrowers.com. You can find contact information and you can post comments through the website or find an address and write a letter. Speaking up, organizing for change can make a huge difference. It doesn't take that many voices for a company to take serious note. You can also post on their Facebook page. We heard from Monica Rosa, who said, thanks for all that you do to get this extremely important information out there. Wish I was exposed to this info years ago, as I worry about how my growing kids eat and implications they may endure down the road. Very upsetting what the food industry does, as there is such needless suffering out there. The gut microbiome is so important in one's health and so damaged from all these toxins we are exposed to. Grateful for all this information and utilizing it in my daily life, and I hope to someday spread the word to many people and help those who are willing to make the change and improve their wellness and health. Yes, Monica, thank you for sharing, and I think, so many of us wish we'd had this information sooner, but we can't rewrite history. However, we can make choices today, and that's what shifts our destiny. We heard from Susan Jago, who said, though I have always dabbled with a plant-based diet, I have now gone 100% plant-based whole foods since my husband died last summer with all of the standard American diet-caused illnesses: AFib, diabetes, obesity, neuropathy, HBP, sleep apnea, anxiety, depression. I wish I had all this information when he was still alive. Perhaps his outcome would have been different. Now I'm telling anyone who will listen. I am amazed, though, at how many will not listen. Well, Susan, I just want to send you some love. I'm so sorry that you lost your husband and that his life was impacted by so much suffering, which of course impacted you and everyone you love and everyone he loved. And we send a little prayer your way right now, actually a big prayer. And I want to thank you for sharing this, and I'm so glad you are here now to learn. And I hope that your husband's suffering doesn't have to be in vain. I hope that somehow, some way, we can heed the lessons from this and apply them. Because, a lot of us take our health for granted, especially younger folks take our health for granted. I think that some would say the most important day of your life is the moment you truly realize that you're mortal, that it won't go on forever. For some of us, this happens early. For some of us, much later. But when that reality truly lands for us, then we have an opportunity to live like it matters, to live like it counts, to make the most of every precious moment we've got. And as we do that, our whole world can change. We heard from Regina Heider, who said, "Thank you so much. I am so thrilled to see all you professionals care and bring us the truth which can set us free. I have been eating foods I know are not good for me and paying for it. This summit is opening my eyes to go back to eat organic and take care of my family. My 29-year-old daughter had cervical cancer and constant backaches. I am telling her daily about this information, and she stopped eating sugar by the tablespoon and pasta. It is a slow shift, but I see progress. Thank you for saving many lives." Thank you for participating, Reginas. We had a question from Julia Zuccarelli, who said, "Can wheat that is advertised as non-GMO still be sprayed with glyphosate?" Well, yes, Julia, this is the reality today. Until recently, glyphosate was only being used on GMO crops that had been engineered to withstand it, but now it's increasingly being used as a desiccant on non-organic crops to dry them out before harvest. And wheat is by far the most widely sprayed crop out there that is not genetically engineered. So if you want to avoid glyphosate, you now have to steer clear not just of GMO crops, but also increasingly of non-organic crops, particularly wheat. So organic wheat is a big priority if you want to steer clear of glyphosate, which, as we have heard today, is probably a good idea for all of us. We heard from Sue Ganaway, who said, "I am so grateful for forums like this. I've been plant-based full-time for 6 months. I'm researching everything I can find on this lifestyle. It has helped me reduce my pre-diabetic risk and maintain a 40-pound weight loss at the age of 63. Thanks for more information. I am spreading the word and want to become a lifestyle coach for others. This is so important." Thank you, Sue, and congratulations on losing 40 pounds at the age of 63 and sustaining that weight loss and reversing or reducing your pre-diabetic risk. We celebrate this shift and we support you in carrying it forward. We had a question from Tony Hannikin, who asked, does eating local organic honey support small beekeepers and promote a healthy bee population, or does that hurt the efforts of healthy bee populations? Thanks so much for asking, Tony. Bees are, as we know, critical to our ability to pollinate and grow food, and their survival is in serious danger. Careful and conscientious beekeepers are helping to support the future of agriculture. They are good for the bee populations. They take good care of their bees and contribute to a healthier world for all of us. Honey, and especially raw honey, has a lot of enzymes and nutrients that may be beneficial for health. I also want to acknowledge that honey is a very concentrated sweetener, and it can be triggering to people who struggle with food addiction issues. We're going to hear more about that from Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson in a few days. So I don't think there's any one-size-fits-all solution. Some people do well with honey, other people may not. I do want to issue a warning about honey, which is that there is a huge difference between local small-scale organic beekeepers and large-scale industrialized honey production, which sometimes gasses bees or feeds them high-fructose corn syrup and treats them in a manner not unlike today's factory farms. So if you choose to eat honey, I want to encourage you to support local, organic, small-scale farmers, ideally raw honey, so you can invest in a healthier and a more humane food system and also get the best possible product for yourself and your family. We heard from Don Weiss, who asked, when organic foods are grown in Mexico and sold in places like Whole Foods, are they USDA certified organic? Is there a possibility that foods that are grown outside the U.S. could be falsely labeled organic? Well, Don, there is a certification system in place that, in theory, ensures that all USDA certified organic meets the USDA organic standards, and those standards have meaning. The current administration has been reducing regulations across the board, and so I can't say that we know with certainty that this is always being adhered to. And organic foods from places like China have got to be considered a little bit suspect. So if you are choosing organic, you also want to, if possible, look at where it was grown, which is often stated when you're buying. And yes, local really matters. And this is one of the reasons why farmers markets and community-supported agriculture programs are particularly beneficial for those of us who can access them. Some people also want to know whether glyphosate and hormones and arsenic and other dangerous chemicals are working their way into organic produce. And let me answer this first by saying that there aren't easy answers here. We live in a polluted world, and if you breathe, if you eat, if you drink, there is no way to protect yourself completely. One of the wonderful things about compost is that it's a process by which waste becomes nutrients that nourish new life. To a great extent, when manure is composted properly in organic agriculture, that's exactly what can happen. But at the same time, some toxins do make their way into even organic crops. So again, supporting local, the big industrial organic agriculture companies are more likely to cut corners and do it the cheapest way possible. Local farmers tend to be more invested in supporting the local economy and caring for their land, thinking long term. One of the most alarming places where contamination has been found to show up in organic foods is with rice. It turns out that rice, out of all the crops, is particularly prone to uptake of arsenic. And if, there's no amount of arsenic that's considered safe for humans. A dose the size of a pea could be lethal. Arsenic concentrates the most in the outer hull in brown rice. Because arsenic concentrates and stays in the soil, and because almost all cropland has history with multiple uses and agricultural styles, this impacts organic rice too. Out of all the rice growers and sellers, Lundberg Family Farms has been the most accountable and the most transparent on this issue. They test their rice regularly with third-party labs, and they make their test results public. Independent analysis from Consumer Reports found that Lundberg's rice had the lowest arsenic levels of any rice on the market. But I want to be clear, those levels are not non-existent. So based on this information, our family has reduced our rice consumption. We now eat more quinoa, millet, amaranth, buckwheat, and we eat less rice. And when we do eat rice, we try to make it rice that comes from Lundberg Family Farms. One of the things that I love about the work that I get to do is all the incredible stories of transformation that I get to hear and participate in. I think these stories can be so healing because they give affirmation to the healthy and they give hope to those of us who are struggling. And they point the way forward for so many who are suffering. There's always hope, and we can ground that hope when we put it into action. Carey Zimmerman lives in Madison, Wisconsin. She participated in one of our summits, and the experience changed her life. She recorded a few words for us that I want to share with you now. This is what she had to say.
Hello, my name is Carey Zimmerman. I am 32 years old and live in Madison, Wisconsin. Currently, I'm feeling so much better than I have in years, and much of that is thanks to the Food Revolution Summit. My parents both died with cancer. mom at 52 years old, dad at 63. As if that wasn't devastating enough, I felt that I was on the same path, leading to disease and premature death. I had my own health concerns since I was a child. I was overweight and then obese by early high school and had significant digestive problems and was diagnosed with IBS. By this time last year, I had been dealing with constant abdominal pain for over a year and a half. It negatively impacted every aspect of my life, and it didn't go away for even a moment. There were many doctors and many tests, but no real answers. The Food Revolution Summit gave me the information, inspiration, and motivation that I needed to improve my diet and lifestyle. The constant pain that I had endured for over 22 months disappeared, and so did the IBS. John, Ocean, and every single one of the speakers, you helped me realize that I could heal myself with food and inspired me to share that information with others. And I will be doing that. I'm currently working on becoming certified as a health coach. You have changed my life, and I am just getting started. Thank you so very much.
Well, thank you to Carey for sharing that transformation with us. We're so proud of you, and I believe you are just getting started. And I want to now share a message we received from Esther Campuzano. And Esther, I'm happy to tell you, you are this segment's Empowerment Package recipient. Esther commented, "Thank you, Ocean and John. I could be listening to John's voice all day long, full of warmth and ease. It's my first time listening to the Food Revolution Summit, and I am so impressed with all your work, research, and speakers. I am facing my second cancer diagnosis, and this summit is giving me a beautiful light. For the last couple days, I've been carrying you all everywhere I go in my AirPods. So grateful to have people who care about our planet and civilization. Please never stop doing this work." Esther, thank you so much for participating, and we want to support you as you're battling cancer and as you're stepping into optimal health. So we are gifting you with an empowerment package. Our team will follow up, and now you can listen to this anytime or place you like for the rest of your life. You can share it with friends and loved ones. You'll have the transcripts to follow up and catch any details you missed. We are so grateful to have you with us, and congratulations. Congratulations also to all of the people who are stepping up and getting the empowerment package and investing in our mission and our work in the process, helping us to spread this mission and reach more people. Specifically, congratulations to Emily from Arizona, Fernanda from Portugal, Sarah from Minnesota, Cheryl from Idaho, Heidi from New York, Philip from Ontario, Canada, Pamela from Ohio, Bridget from British Columbia, Canada, Joy from Anchorage, Alaska, and Susan from Virginia. Congratulations to all of you and everyone else who is owning this for life, taking a stand for your health, and investing in our mission. And now it's time for our revolutionary recipe and how-to tip of the day with Karen Hartglass. Karen is the founder of Responsible Eating and Living, or REAL. She's a chef extraordinaire, and she is co-host of Food Revolution Network's wildly popular Plant-Powered and Thriving online course. Karen is brilliant at making healthy eating doable, delicious, and fun. And on each day of this summit, you're getting to hear her introducing a recipe of the day, which you will find on our broadcast and replays page. So, I'm going to hand it now to Karen.
Hi, everyone. Food safety is a scary subject. One way we protect ourselves and my family from hidden dangers in our food supply is by preparing organic, minimally processed, whole plant food dishes at home. And today's recipe is a wonderful example. If you love pasta, and who doesn't, have you tried spaghetti squash? Spaghetti squash is nature's own noodle. I love how easy it is to prepare. Now, what I do is I wash the squash and place it on a sheet pan. I cook it in the oven for about an hour, and that's it. I don't cut it first before cooking it. That's too hard because the squash is hard. And I don't wrap it in anything because it's already wrapped in its own skin. Once the squash is soft, I cut it open, remove the seeds, and scoop out the spaghetti perfectly al dente every time. I love spaghetti squash topped with the fresh tomato basil salsa in today's recipe. This dish is gluten-free, oil-free, sugar-free, and guilt-free. It's a lovely summer dish, and it's wonderful served hot or cold. Here's to delicious, nutritious, and safe food for you and your family.
Thanks so much, Karen. Yes, here is to delicious, nutritious, and safe food for you and your family, and for all of us. Carol Cochran said, "This has been the most important and incredible summit of my life. I am 67 years old, not in the best health, but as soon as I acquire the necessary literature, cookbooks, and how to transition into this life-changing lifestyle, I am sure I will be on my way to much better health and happiness. I will be eternally grateful to John and Ocean Robbins and all who have participated in this wonderful program." Yes, Carol, well, we want to support you in that, so I want to let you know about Plant Powered and Thriving, which is the online course that my dad and I lead with Karen Hartglass. We're launching one in about a month, and you can find information about it right on our broadcast page, and you can actually sign up for a special summit special discount price if you want to join in now. The whole purpose of this course is helping you apply what you're learning and master healthy eating for life. So if that's a resource that can support you, we would love to have you in the course with us. We heard from Lorraine Diaversa, who said, "Thank you, John, Ocean, and community. I now have more understanding of why I have loved this summit over the last 7 years. I feel empowered. I feel encouraged. I feel like I have smart, empowered, and loving individuals on my team. Thank you once again from the bottom of my heart." Well, thank you, Lorraine. Wow, you've been with us for 7 years. We've been doing this for 7 years. And I have to tell you, the summit keeps growing. Every single year for the last 7 years, we've broken our own records. And I think that's not so much an expression of us, it's an expression of you. It's an expression of all of the people who are standing up, who are fed up with toxic food, who are ready to learn and grow and discover what's possible, because we are part of a movement that is shifting the course of history. So congratulations to everybody participating, and truly, from my heart to yours, thank you. We heard from Amanda Kuiper, who said, "Thank you so much. I've been telling friends and family to listen to this summit. I've gained so much knowledge." Well, thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much for telling friends and family. Let's spread this word. We're just on day 3 here. There are still almost a week to go. So let's tell people you can join us. They can join us. Sign up at foodrevolutionsummit.org. Participate in the revolution. And then we can have friends and family and loved ones to share the journey with us, which is such a beautiful thing. So we are now moving towards completion of day 3 of the Food Revolution Summit. And again, to express your opinions on what you've been hearing and to find out what other people are saying, post and engage in the comments on our broadcast page. Make sure to refresh the comments so you can see the latest ones. You can also join in the conversation on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Food Revolution Network. Come back and join us tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. GMT for Food and Cancer. Nourish every cell to stay well. Despite the billions of dollars raised and spent in the war on cancer, despite all the pink ribbons and all the races for the cure, cancer takes the lives of more than 8 million people every year, and its devastating toll keeps rising. But did you know what's causing this epidemic? Is it bad luck or bad genetics? Is it the deficiency of some drug that hasn't yet been invented? No, it's not. We now know that 90% of cancer is actually caused by a combination of diet, lifestyle, and environment. That is 9 out of every 10 cases, and it's wonderful news. Because this puts the power in your hands where it belongs. You're going to find out more about what the research really tells us and how you can put it all into action in your life tomorrow. So join us to hear from Dr. William Lee on the science of cancer prevention, from Chris Wark on the real story of how he beat cancer. And you're going to hear from best-selling medical medium author Anthony William. And in the meanwhile, you can post your comments and share in the conversation. You can catch and share the replays at foodrevolutionsummit.org/replays. You can check out the empowerment package and invest in your health and our mission. And I want to also invite you to enjoy some delicious, healthy food. We wish you a beautiful, thriving day. This is Ocean Robbins, signing off from day 3 in the Food Revolution Summit. No matter where you come from or what you've been through, the simple truth is you are meant to thrive. You deserve boundless energy, a clear mind, and a lean and healthy body. You deserve to feel confident and clear about what you eat and why. The Food Revolution Summit is packed with insights, and trying to catch and absorb all of them can be hard. That's why we created the Empowerment Package. With your Empowerment Package, you can own the entire summit, plus all the transcripts and loads of bonus materials for life. Absorb this life-changing material at a pace that's comfortable and easy for you. Join in this movement. Support this mission. Buy your Empowerment Package today.